What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Will and D YouTube channel. I am the victorious Will and D. Very happy with my game this week, and I'm here with my buddy Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports.
Definitely. That was a great win for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish over the USC Trojans. Absolutely annihilated them. Can't wait to talk about that game and the other wacky results from last week and get into the upcoming games as well. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We have Buckeye Mike. Just got back from work. Hoping work wasn't too bad for you, man. Happy you're here. As first off, we will talk about, of course, since it's my channel, we will talk about the USC Notre Dame game. Just a complete performance by the Notre Dame defense. Still frustrated at times by the offense, but overall, it was a great team overall win for my Irish, and it was an awesome game to be to, man. It was just the environment was absolutely electric. Very, very blessed I was able to go. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to go, man. Would have loved to have been there with you. I'm sure it was a
I
fantastic
know we need to go to a game
crowd.
at some point in the next 5 years. We will go to a game.
That would be awesome, man, for sure. That atmosphere on television was unmatched, barely. There's some other good games as well, but yeah, that would be awesome for sure. When I was watching the game, the biggest thing for me was seeing that USC, they're a team that they need their offense to be basically perfect to win because their defense, I don't know how many times we have to say that it's abysmal but that's what it is. It's awful. For a team with the amount of talent that they have, it is an awful defense. And Caleb Williams bailed them out in the Arizona State, Arizona, and Colorado football games with the amount of offense he put up, basically by himself, it seems, him and the receivers. Well, in this game, he did not play well, had 3 interceptions, and Notre Dame just kept blitzing and blitzing and blitzing, and it worked. And he made mistakes, and he looked human. He looked like a quarterback that for the first time in his basically college football career didn't have an answer. He could not respond. Like even in the games USC and Oklahoma have lost with him in, like he always seemed to be right there. It was competitive. He had a bad game. And USC's defense could not bail them out. They could not save the day with a finally poor performance from the offense for USC. And then Notre Dame, they took advantage of it, turned those turnovers into points. And basically, USC's defense is showing that even a struggling offense like Notre Dame was coming into this game, that they can look good on offense. Even if they didn't put up a ton of yards, they were efficient when they had the ball, and that's what matters. And Notre Dame put up the points, and that's what matters as well. And they completely trounced USC. And I thought that this would be a close game, but I thought Caleb Williams would have more, of an offensive day, better showing, and that USC was going to put up 40 points, and maybe they'd win because I did pick them. But it just goes to show that, picking Notre Dame and picking USC is almost impossible because of the way that these two teams are. Notre Dame looked like a top 5 team in this game, but obviously they're not because they have 2 losses. But it was a great performance for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wish they could have played like this against Louisville too, but that's okay. Maybe we can make the playoffs next year. But yeah, ND's red zone defense was bad last year, and Al Golden's completely turned it around. So credit to Al Golden being able to do his job this season much more successfully as defensive coordinator. Although it was 3 defensive coordinators in 3 years for the Irish last year, so that might have been part of it. But yeah, I'm just like the secondary for Notre Dame. Like I'm like, okay, this like I knew it coming into the season. It has been a strength of this team, but for them to play as well as they did, like I generally think like they might all be NFL. Like all 3 of the starters on that team, Cam Hart, Ben Morrison, and of course Xavier Watts. I think they're all NFL players, and they all showed that. So just very happy about the performance of the defensive backs for sure.
Yeah, they probably will. They played an excellent game. And, I mean, you look at the fact that Notre Dame had the close loss to Ohio State in a game that I still believe that they should have won.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the Duke game, a game that they should have lost, but they win. And then the Louisville game, they did not play well. They were just tired and beat down. But you can say that Notre Dame responded like a team should after a tough loss like that with Louisville. They completely responded. Even look at last year. with the Marshall and Stanford losses, and they bounced back and beat Clemson the way that they did. This felt like the Clemson game last year, just over, I would say, more high-profile opponent, I guess, and plus it's a rivalry game as well with USC, Notre Dame, with the history they have. So it just felt like that. It felt like a game like that where Notre Dame just showed this is what they can be. But they have to play like this more often and more consistently if they do want to be, a consistent top 10 team in future seasons with Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, Mike, of course, happy that the UFC lost too. Me and Mike can both be happy about that.
It's so funny with Buckeye Mike, though, with USC. Sometimes he's so happy when they lose, and sometimes he's not. Sometimes he's like, oh, USC, fantastic. I don't know. Mike's all over the place with his USC, whether he likes or don't like him.
Do you like my background, Mike? I think you like my background with the fight on down.
That's an awesome background.
Yeah. I saw that picture on Twitter. I need to get it. And I was able to download the picture from Twitter. But yeah, hopefully Notre Dame has a bye week this week. Hopefully the offense can get strengthened out a bit because I really want to end that streak of not winning a New Year's Six bowl game since 1994. I would love
which is insane for a program like Notre Dame. Yeah. That stat should not exist. I mean, that's like Indiana not making the Final Four since 2002 in basketball. It shouldn't happen. I mean, Indiana in basketball, Notre Dame in football, you should not have those long streaks. Yeah. It's insane. Notre Dame's better than that.
Yeah. Georgia taking care of Vandy. Vandy had the first touchdown early, and I'm like, holy crap, is Vandy actually going to beat Georgia? They're like, no, they aren't. But still, like, if you're a Georgia fan, you would want to beat Vandy by more than 17 points, just based on the talent differential of the two teams.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way Michigan has been playing. We'll get to them. They're blowing out everybody. And then Georgia, you have the sluggish games against Vanderbilt, Auburn, South Carolina. And it's not like South Carolina and Auburn are necessarily bad teams or anything, but Georgia had to squeak by Auburn. And it took Brock Bowers to win that game in the fourth quarter. He saved that game for the Bulldogs. And, he gets injured, and we're going to have to find out how long he's out, and hopefully for the Bulldogs that he'll be able to return. But Georgia just doesn't look like a team. Outside of that Kentucky game, they don't look dominant, and they look very beatable. So we'll have to see as the season goes along, for Georgia, how things are progressing. Now, Jackson with the update here, he says Vandy Vick came with the price of Brock Bowers out for the year. I did not see that, so thanks for the update. That stinks for Brock Bowers. Now Mike says he's expected to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So I have no idea. However long he's out, it's not good for Georgia that they're going to be without him. They're going to be playing Tennessee soon. Games like that where they could use him. It's going to be interesting to see if Georgia can still win without Brock Bowers because they do not look like a dominant football team outside of the Kentucky game.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think the SEC is down this year, so I still think that Georgia should be able to take advantage and win the SEC. But still, I mean, there's some teams that are starting to look better that we'll talk about later that maybe they can put up a fight for all 4 quarters against Georgia. We'll see, though.
I think the key with Georgia, though, and we'll get to those other teams, you have to be good on defense. Like, and we'll talk about them. Like Alabama, for example, the way that they're playing on defense, for the most part, is good enough to hang with Georgia. Other teams like your LSU's, Ole Misses that are struggling on defense, it's going to allow it much easier for Georgia to score. I think that's the key, really, for Georgia to be beaten. You have to be good on defense, slow down their offense.
Yeah. We have, unfortunately, Michigan taking care of business against Indiana. They still haven't played a great team yet, so we're still not sure how good this Michigan team is. But they definitely are playing down to competition.
Yeah, I love the debate online with how, Michigan, we're the most dominant team in college football. We're blowing everybody out. We're beating everybody by 30-plus points. And then the, opponents like Ohio State and other fan bases are like, well, you haven't played anybody. That's true. I mean, both are true. Yeah. Absolutely true. Because if Michigan was barely winning these games, then they'd be like, oh, you're terrible, Michigan, because you beat Indiana by 1 score. At least they're doing what they should be doing. Yeah. They're beating everyone, even Minnesota on the road. It doesn't matter who it is. They've destroyed them. Again, none of those teams are good, but it's still mighty impressive for Michigan that they are doing that because even Georgia isn't. And Indiana, just like you said with Vanderbilt, how they were up 7-0, Indiana was up 7-0. They were actually up 7-0 at the end of the quarter. Things were looking pretty good. Indiana, and then it's over. Like, you go from, can Indiana actually hang to annihilation in about 30 minutes? And that's exactly what occurred. So Indiana, they're on the brink. We're going to talk about their upcoming game next week.
Big game.
They have to win. They have to win next week if they're going to make a bowl or have any shot of Tom Allen hopefully turning around his tenure. But this was an ugly loss for Indiana after the good start. And until Michigan plays somebody, no one's going to really believe in them besides Michigan fans, but they have looked good.
Yeah. With Mike, of course, not agreeing.
This is the greatest Michigan team ever. Most dominant team, better than Jordan, everyone. We should be number one. We'll win the Natty running away. I mean, it's too early. I mean, for anybody, injuries could happen or, whatever. You just never know. But, I mean, as of now, Michigan's look great. Can't deny that.
Ohio State, looking like Ohio State, and taking down Purdue.
Yeah, the thing about Purdue, and I know it's new coaching staff with Ron Walters instead of Jeff Brom, and that makes a big difference. But when Purdue beat Ohio State back in 2018,
they had Rondale Moore.
Rondale Moore, a guy that was explosive as they come. And that was before he got hurt. Like the first time, like Rondale Moore then was different than Rondale Moore now. He's still good, even with the injuries. But there was something about Rondale Moore back in 2018. He had a different gear. And, with Jeff Brom's creative play calling at times, Purdue was able to win that game. And they were better back then. And Purdue's not as good anymore. And Ohio State is probably better than they were then. So this isn't surprising. They were favored by 20 or 19 or whatever, and they won by 34. So they took care of business. And this is probably a more impressive win than the Michigan one over Indiana because it was on the road. Real quick to answer Mike's question on the transitive property, you can't buy into that because of the fact that you could say any result has an effect on another result. Like someone said one time that, the national champion lost to this team and then that team lost to that team and it went all the way down to, they lost to a MAC school. So that MAC school is better than the national champion. Don't work that way. Everyone knows it doesn't work that way. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
results are not indicative of how good or bad a team are always.
We're going to talk about this game right later, but obviously Louisville beat Notre Dame, but Louisville lost to Pitt. So
Pitt's not better than Louisville, and Louisville's not better than Notre Dame. None of those are true. Even though Louisville beat Notre Dame and lost to Pitt, Pitt's still bad. Pitt is still a bad football team, but they beat Louisville coming off a big win, and it was on the road, and they played bad. I mean, the same way that Louisville played against Pitt would have got them blown out against Notre Dame. And the same way that Notre Dame played against USC would have had them beat Louisville by a lot. But see, Notre Dame played poorly against Louisville, good against USC, and they played bad against Louisville, and then Louisville played bad against Pitt. That's the way it is. Teams play better on certain weekends than they do at other times. Like Alabama. If Alabama played the way that they did against Arkansas, which we'll get to that game, against Texas A&M, they don't win against Texas A&M. They played better against A&M, played worse against Arkansas, but they still won both games.
Yeah, I was saying, I'm like, man, I'm so scared of Pitt because we're at Notre Dame's next game is against Pitt out of the bye week. So I'm like, oh no. Pitt. Although Pitt always plays Notre Dame tough. I mean, besides the COVID year, they always play us tough. But we always play bad against Penn. Pitt always plays well against us. So the game's always close.
Sometimes it happens, but I'm just a believer in that some teams are just better than another team no matter what. Even if it's based just off talent alone, even if you don't win. It's kind of like last year when everyone was saying, Vanderbilt's better than Texas A&M. Even if Vanderbilt
I still think that Vanderbilt, there's still a strong chance Vanderbilt wins that game. I'm not saying
the thing is even if Vanderbilt beat Texas A&M last year, my mom would still believe Texas A&M's a better team. Why? Because Vanderbilt has no 5-stars on their team. A&M is full of them. And I understand that your ranking isn't always indicative of how good of a college player you are. But looking at A&M and looking at Vanderbilt, A&M was better than Vanderbilt. They blew out LSU by 2 scores in the final game of the regular season. They were clearly better than Vanderbilt. It's just that A&M played so badly at times it made people think Vandy was better. But still, A&M was a better team despite them playing poorly.
I mean, you saw how much of a mess Vandy was last year, though. I mean, not Vandy, Texas A&M was, because those players just didn't care. A lot of those 5-star guys that they gave money, they're like, "Okay, we have our money. We don't have to care about football anymore." That
You're
was
right.
a lot of the A&M players, and they all transferred out.
You're right, but that still doesn't mean that Vanderbilt's a better football team. I mean,
well, it means they're playing better because they actually want. They're putting in the effort and they want to win.
It's a complicated theory, way you look at it all over the place. It's like if you say, is Oregon State a better team than USC? Talent-wise, it's USC, but Oregon State, for the most part, has played better. That's to your point. I just still believe with Vandy A&M, it's not even in the same ballpark. Like, Vandy's not better. They're just not. Like, when has Vanderbilt ever been better than Texas A&M? Like, ever. Like, maybe 1 year under James Franklin. Like, once. And even that.
Probably one of the years under James Franklin.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I remember they had Jay Cutler, too, but I don't know. They might have made a bowl with Jay Cutler.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was 1 year they took – I can look it up real quick. Oh, I'm getting off track.
Yeah, I know, but it's what makes college football discussion fun is talking about all these different scenarios. I mean, it is what it is. A lot of it's opinion, but sometimes it can be fact as well. The transitive property sometimes goes too far, though.
Oh, they didn't make a bowl with Jay Cutler, but they made a bowl in 2008.
Wow. That's crazy. And Jay Cutler, I remember watching him with the Bears for the longest time.
They did beat Tennessee, though, with Jay Cutler.
Interesting. Yeah, Tennessee was starting to decline.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they were like ranked, and then they lost to Urban's first Florida team, and then they kind of fell apart. Yeah, Brady Quinn era Notre Dame team beat them pretty good.
That's wild. It's blast from the past.
Yeah, Syracuse, man. I'm like, all right, Syracuse. Maybe they can win a big game this year. They were off to a 4-0 start. Total unmitigated collapse by them.
Well, I mean, it's not just that they're losing, it's how they're losing. I mean, the most competitive game that they've played is against Clemson, in the ACC of the losses that they've suffered. They got destroyed against North Carolina and Florida State. At least against Clemson, it was like 31-14. Yeah. Against North Carolina, it was 47, and then this game is 41-3. So, I don't know. I think that looking at the Cuse, they can beat teams that are worse than them, but they haven't shown this season anyway that they can hang with anybody better than them. So that is just the case for the Syracuse, and if they don't clean that up, they're going to struggle to make a bowl.
The thing
I love this comment from Buckeye Mike. He says, Monday Night Football now decides to be good once I get home. Interesting. Mike actually believes that him coming home makes the game now good. I've been watching it the whole time, Mike, and I can tell you that the game has been pretty good the entire game. I don't think that you coming home is indicative of the game becoming better. I love that.
The thing is, Dino Babers has this loser mentality. Man, like last year when they went 6-0, they're like, "Yeah, we made a bowl game. We made a bowl game." He's like, "I'm like, you should be fighting for a spot in the ACC title game. Like, you should be more concerned about that than not making a bowl game, man." So, I feel like did Dino really care about this game? I feel like he only cares about getting to 6 wins, man, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah, I know, Mike. I was just messing with him, just kidding. But yeah, to your point. Will, about Dino Babers, it's true. Granted, Syracuse doesn't have the talent. We go back to that talent gap again.
Well, they've done it before, though. They've won a big game before, though, against Clemson. So, why should you just already think that you're going to lose? Like, at least
I agree. You have the mentality that even though you're a worse team, because Syracuse is by far worse than Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina on talent, on paper, they're worse by far. You still, to your point, should believe that you can win those games. Because if you don't, what's the point of playing in them?
Yeah.
It's like early Tom Allen's the same way. Early Tom Allen, he was like, "Oh, we're going to win the Big Ten. We're going to fight to be competitive in this league, in the Big Ten East." And even though for the most part they weren't, even in the bad seasons, they went 5-7. They always had a game or two against Penn State or Michigan where it was close. Like Indiana was taking Michigan to the fourth quarter or overtime. Same with Penn State. Now they're getting obliterated by everybody. And it's like, oh, let's hope we make a bowl game. Yeah, that should be your hope. But that's just sounding like Dino Babers. Indiana has like fallen so far to the point where it used to be, oh, Indiana's competitive. They're interesting. And now they're getting destroyed. It feels like that with Syracuse. They were at least kind of interesting a few years ago. Now it's like, oh, they can beat teams they're better than, but then they play worse teams, or they play better teams and they play worse than they did against those teams that they were better than. They're playing awful football. I mean, this wasn't even competitive. Ball State College put up a fight against Florida State. Syracuse gets destroyed 41-3 after getting destroyed 40-7 against UNC. So it's a bad look. I agree with you. Dino Babers, if he doesn't get, some decent seasons under his belt back to back, I mean, I know that he's been there a long time, but eventually he's probably not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. Right. We have Penn State. I'm just going to skip this game because UMass is a competitive team.
Weird time to have that game, too. Middle of the season.
Right. I think they did it. I mean, you know why they did that, though, because they wanted to do it right before Ohio State.
But that's an SEC thing. It's kind of like having the easy game for rivalry where Alabama's playing the Citadel before Auburn. I mean, that's what the SEC does, not the Big Ten. Like Indiana's playing like Wisconsin before they're playing Ohio State. But Penn State gets UMass, Massachusetts. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the game of the week. The battle for the Cascade region, I guess, the Cascadian Clash.
Yeah, this game right here, I was looking forward to it the entire time. And you talk about, that most people thought this would be the game of the day, and it was. Oregon and Washington are two really good football teams. Are they elite? I don't know. I don't know if either team is elite.
They might be, yeah.
I don't know if either team's elite, but they're close. They are really close, and both teams could have won. And this is one of those games where the loser just doesn't feel like one. I mean, what about Oregon's performance was negative? Not really. You could argue that they played better than Washington, to be honest. I mean, Bo Nix threw for more yards than Michael Penix. They ran the ball better. Like Oregon had like 170 rushing yards, whereas Washington had like 90. So Oregon, for the most part, played better than Washington, but they still didn't win. Washington put up more points. And that's what matters at the end of the day. But it was a great game. Both quarterbacks showcased why they're in the Heisman race. Michael Penix obviously gets the edge there because he did lead the game-winning drive with Rome Odunze catching the touchdown pass to put them up 36-33. But I enjoyed this game. It was a fantastic game, and this is exactly what I was hoping to see from both these teams. I wanted to see a really good football game between two really good teams, and that's what we got. And the loser in Oregon shouldn't feel bad that they lost. In Washington, this is a big win, but I got some more tough games coming up. But if they can somehow, win out, they'll be in the college football playoff, and that'd be huge for Washington. They haven't made it since Jake Browning in 2016. So Washington, this was a huge win and a great rivalry game.
Mm-hmm. And to Mike's point, no, it's not better than the 2013 Florida State team because that Florida State team had one kind of close game against Boston College, but they were destroying everyone else. Like they were winning by like 28, at least by 28 points in like every other game.
Yeah, I was gonna say that this team's not as good. I mean, you have to be an elite team to win a national title anymore. An elite team, like you can't be just like really good and win. You have to basically be elite, unless every single team isn't. And maybe that's this year, and maybe somehow Florida State can do that. But I don't know. I agree with you. That team was better than the 2013-14 team.
Yeah, I mean, I know the ACC was like kind of more down than it is now back then, but still.
Yeah, just even like 2 years ago, the ACC was awful. So now it's better.
It's better than it was.
That changes.
Touchdown Chargers. Okay. But
Mike's just trying to ask us a bunch of questions so we won't get done.
I'll rank them ahead of 2014. That 2014 team was a fluke and everyone could see it. I mean, I'm extremely bitter over the refs screwing over Notre Dame in that 2014 game. So that is part of my bias. That was not offensive pass interference. That was not offensive pass interference, man. Oh my gosh, that game.
I love how a game from 9 years ago can still invoke so much feeling and passion. That's unbelievable. But I know what you mean, man.
You remember the play? Do you remember it?
I was 10 years old, I think. I do remember that game. It was bad.
Freaking refs, man.
That mistakes happen. I mean, I've had arguments in chat before with people. Refs, they do the best that they can, and they try. It's like, okay, I know that. I'm not gonna try to call out refs or anything like that, but they do make mistakes. They're human beings. We're all human beings. They're gonna make mistakes. So yeah, then the games of, the Saints Rams game in the NFL, everyone points to that. Stuff like that happens. Just egregiously bad calls, whether they're no calls or a bad call itself, they do happen. And I don't think anybody denying that is accurate. It's true. But I agree with you as well. Well, I would go 2013, 2023 for now, and then 2014 for sure.
Man, that game, I freaking hate that game. But yeah, I mean, Washington, this was a great listen, man. I honestly couldn't watch that many games because we were like tailgating and all that. But I was watching the end, and I felt like Dan Lanning, like looking back at it, I feel like Dan Lanning went for it. He should have taken the points a couple times, I feel like. I mean, I know it's just like, I don't know if it's the analytics thing, why he went for it every time. I don't know if he's just like a gambler, but I feel like sometimes you just got to go for points. I mean, if you're going to punt and go for it, that's one thing, but I think that in some ways that cost Oregon the game, not kicking field goals because they only lost by 3.
Yeah, Washington did it once too, late in the game. Washington went for it and didn't get it either, and they could have kicked the field goal. So both teams did it. Yeah. And I think, like you, it's the analytics, like you said. And is that necessarily accurate to do that? It depends on the situation. I've talked to people about this before because there are some people that are all the way on the analytics. If the analytics say yes, you do it every single time. I understand that, but to me, I think there are certain decisions in games that should not be always done with the analytics. Like if you're struggling, like as a team, to get like fourth downs. I've seen this with teams before. Like they'll say, oh, this team is like 2-14 on fourth down. And yet they're still going for it on fourth down. It's like, okay, you're in field goal range, take the points. Like certain situations, you got to take the points. So I'm not anti-analytics, and I know why people use them, but sometimes it can cost you games. Like I've seen Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss go for it tons of times on fourth down. It's like, okay, if they kick a field goal, or, if they punt there, they probably win this game. He's lost probably 5 or 6 games in his, tenured Ole Miss just because they went for it so much. And I understand, again, why he does. I'm not saying he's wrong, but when you don't get it, it really burns. So, yeah, Oregon, it hurt them that they didn't kick field goal, and same with Washington, but Washington ended up winning. But, yeah, it depends on the situation for the analytics for me.
Yeah. And, Mike, both of these games are at home for Oregon and Washington. So they should take care of business, but I don't know. I'm not counting out the Beavers. The Cougs,
what happened to them? I know. Again, we're going to get to them. We're getting so ahead with all these topic points, but what happened to Washington State? You go out there and you beat Oregon State. I picked Oregon State because I'm like, the Beavs, I trust them more than the Cougars, even though Cam Ward's really good. And then it's like Washington State wins. They're ranked 13th. Everyone's high on them. And then the last 2 weeks. The UCLA loss wasn't horrible, but then losing to Arizona at home by 38 points, I have no words for how bad that was for Washington State.
Alabama squeaks by again, man. I don't trust Alabama this year, man. They haven't earned my trust back after that Texas game, but they are still in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. A lot of people think Alabama is, getting by and that they are going to end up losing later in the season. They'll be out of the playoff hunt, and that's possible. I mean, they got a tough game coming up this week. We'll definitely be talking about it. So they haven't really proven anything. They're just getting by, and sometimes that's good enough. Sometimes it is. I mean, I feel like this game right here is just Alabama. I wouldn't say playing down to their competition, but they played better against Texas A&M last week. or the 2 weeks ago. This past game against Arkansas, they were up 24-3. And then or 24-8, whatever, or 24-6. And then Arkansas comes back and almost wins. So, and plus, like Jackson said, this is true. He says one of these days the penalties will cause Bama to lose another game, knocks out of the playoffs. I don't understand. For me, one of the biggest differences between Alabama prior to 2020, the last time they won a national title, versus the last 3 years, they have been so penalized the last 3 seasons. Versus before that time, they were one of the most disciplined teams in college football. That's why it was so hard to beat them, because they're going to play good on defense. They're going to do good enough on offense, even if they didn't have like a great offensive team. And then they're not going to make mistakes. Alabama's making mistakes, and a lot of them are just not smart mistakes. They're just false starts, holds. Like, they don't make sense, for Alabama to do these things. So I think that looking at Alabama, they have flaws. They're not perfect. Milroe is not perfect. But I do think that the Crimson Tide are getting by for now, which is what they need to do if they want to stay in the playoff hunt. And we'll see what happens the rest of the season. Do I think Alabama's a playoff team right now? No. But they haven't been super impressive, but at least they're winning.
Short answer, no. Tennessee, no. Joe Milton's bad. He's bad.
Yeah, I would say the same. Not right now. I mean, they barely beat A&M at home, and I know that's a decent win and all, but
that was
Joe
an
Milton
awful football game,
offense.
man. That was just bad.
A&M's not as good without Connor Wegman. That's true. Like, when Connor Wegman was in, they were putting up points, and now they are struggling to score as much as they were before. Max Johnson's trying, but they're just turning the ball over more.
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask you this. Do you think Carolina is actually better than Alabama? Obviously, talent-wise, no, but I feel like they're playing better than Alabama, so maybe they could beat the Tide.
Well, I mean, that's a tough one, because obviously, from like the teams I've told you I like both teams. So it's like, if Carolina beat Alabama, I'd be happy for Carolina. I'd be really happy, but I mean, it would stink for Bama. But you know how people do the out of 10, how many times a team will win? I would still say Alabama would beat Carolina 8 out of the 10 times. I mean, Carolina could beat Alabama this year. Yes. If Drake May is slinging it downfield, throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns like he's capable of, yes, North Carolina can beat Alabama. But I would still pick Alabama to win over North Carolina in a game, even if it was at Carolina. And I think Alabama would win at least 8 of the 10 times, even if Carolina did win. Like, if Alabama and Carolina played right now and Carolina did win, I still would believe Alabama will win the game more times. Like I said, out of 10. So it doesn't exactly answer your question. Basically, yes, Carolina can beat Alabama. And when Carolina's playing at their best, they do look better than Alabama. But obviously, Alabama's still more talented, and they have shown enough flashes, I guess, somewhat this season to still believe that they could, for the most part, beat North Carolina. But yes, that shows you Alabama's not as good, because most years that would not be the case. Alabama would floor Carolina. And it shows you Carolina's better. I don't know how legit Carolina is, because a lot of people are wondering, is Carolina legit? Can they actually win out and make the playoff? I don't know about that. Maybe, but it's more than likely not, but you never know. But this was a good win, even though Miami is really struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true. Tez Walker is making the offense a lot better.
Yeah. Do you think that with Caleb Williams having a bad game, do you think that Drake May can win the Heisman Trophy?
It's tough because he's in competition with Michael Penix and Bo Nix and other quarterbacks. But if Drake May can keep up the good performances like he's had the last 2 weeks against Syracuse and Miami, because he had a not so great start to the season. He had 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's throwing for a lot of yards, but he wasn't having a good touchdown to pick ratio. But if he keeps up the stellar performances and somehow Carolina was able to go undefeated or have 1 loss, I think he could win. I think it is possible that he could win. He's not the favorite right now. It's probably Michael Penix or Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams is somewhere in there, and Drake May somewhere in there as well, like in the top 5. I think he could win it, though, if he keeps up the good performance. Caleb Williams' game against Notre Dame is really going to hurt him from having any shot at winning it again. He'd have to have some great performances the rest of the season.
I feel like Miami wins games if Tyler Van Dyke has less than 2 interceptions, but if he has 2 or more, they always lose. And once again, he had 2 and they lost.
Well, I mean, you look at the fact that Omari and Hampton had 197 yards on the ground. Like, that's not going to win you games if you're Miami. You can't give the other team that many yards on the ground. Like, North Carolina, the thing that makes them better this year is the fact that their defense is a little bit better than last season. It is better. It's not significantly better, but it's better. And the other thing is that North Carolina has a better ground game than last season because Drake May was the leading rusher for UNC last season. This year, it's Omari and Hampton by far over Drake May. Drake May is not having to run as much. He's not having to put his body through as much. And the ground game for North Carolina is legitimately playing well. So North Carolina has more, offensive weapons, and they're a bit better defensively, which is why I think Carolina is a better team than they were last season so far. And yeah, it's not going to, like I said, Miami's not going to win games if you're giving up that many on the ground. And Van Dyke didn't play horrible, but they gave up 41. I mean, if Tyler Van Dyke played like this against Georgia Tech, they don't lose that game. Yeah. So they played better, but they still lost, and that's all that matters. They still lost.
What the heck, Louisville? What the freaking heck?
I know Pitt's a tough place to play, and I know a lot of people talk about if you're a ranked teams, go to die when they go to Pitt. But Carolina won there. I know. Like, it wasn't their best performance, but Carolina won by 17. And they were actually up by more. Pitt kind of scored late. So Carolina basically dominated against Pitt for the most part. Louisville, who a lot of people on the internet were saying is better. They were saying last week that Louisville was better than North Carolina. I saw this. They were like, it's Florida State, and then it's Louisville, and then it's everyone else. Like, Carolina is a step below. I didn't think that was true. And I'm not saying that this result here is indicative of that because, yeah, it would be hard for Carolina to beat Notre Dame. It'd be tough. And Louisville did a great job. But I look to those Louisville performances, again, against NC State, Indiana, and Georgia Tech. I've rattled them off tons of times to reference this. Louisville did not play good in those games. None of those games. They won those games. But if Louisville loses even one of those 3 games, if they blow it against Indiana, because they almost did, if they don't beat Georgia Tech, whatever, then I don't really think people would have ever thought Louisville was that good. The schedule was making Louisville look good. They got by, and then when they had a big game, all props to Louisville. They played great, and then they came back down to earth. They're better than Pitt. They're not a worse team than Pittsburgh, but they played poorly, and I just think that it shows you that Louisville is not ready to be a top-tier ACC team. I still think that there's several ACC teams that are better than Louisville right now.
What do you think about the hype that I follow a couple of Pitt people on Twitter, and they're really hyping up their quarterback that they put in for this game, Christian Velu. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's a complex last name. I watched a few minutes of this game, but I didn't really hear it enough to pronounce it correctly.
Do you think that Pitt would be like a top 25 team if he would have started all the games? Do you think they would have beat West Virginia, Cincinnati, and Virginia Tech?
Well, I mean, if he continues to rack up good performances, like if Pittsburgh somehow makes a bowl game, or they're just looking better toward the end of the season with the new QB, then probably. Because I mean, West Virginia, it's funny to me how a lot of people's perceptions of football teams can vary so quickly. It's like West Virginia. I was seeing people, mostly West Virginia fans, and I get it. When you love your team, you're going to, think things like that. And that's fine. I mean, it's not unvalidated. But I was seeing people say that West Virginia could make the Big 12 title game because they went 4-1 and they had a relatively easy schedule the rest of the way outside of playing Oklahoma because of what they were doing, because they beat Pitt and they got all these wins. They beat TCU, and then they just lose to Houston. Basically saved Dana Holgerson's job for now. The guy that West Virginia fans loathe, and everything. And like Neil Brown, was supposed to save his job, and now he's back on the chopping block potentially. So, I mean, I think that people's perception of teams just change rather quickly. And if the new QB for Pitt, basically to the point I'm trying to make, if he continues to win games, then of course the narrative's going to be, well, what if they had this guy? against West Virginia? What if they had this guy against Cincinnati? Then, of course, people would be like, Pitt could have been an ACC title contender. So you never know. I mean, Pitt, it's a good win, but we need to see more to really know if the new QB is the guy and he's really going to help lead, Pittsburgh. But yeah, I mean, would Phil Dracovic have put up 38 in this game the way he's been playing? No, but if Phil Dracovic was playing the way he was at Boston College as a freshman, yeah. So it's like people's perception of teams and players change based on how they play. I mean, Phil Dracovic used to be a highly thought of quarterback. Now he's not because of how his play is recently. And if this new guy's better, then I think that people will start to think higher of Pitt and him.
All right, Buckeye Mike wants to know if Pitt will make a bowl game. I'll give him Wake. I'll give them Wake. Loss.
I think Duke, Florida State, and Notre Dame are better than them. Because by that time, Duke's going to have Riley Leonard back.
I bet they're going 5-7, so no.
Yes. And if you had this new quarterback and he does play better the rest of the season, then yeah, they probably would have beaten a team like Virginia Tech. So yeah, they would have made a bowl game if this guy ends up playing better for the rest of the season. But we'll have to see how they do.
The Beavs.
Good win.
DJU looked really good.
Yeah, the key, too, is he didn't turn it over. He has no picks in this game, which he's had a lot of picks in other games this season. So, Oregon State, it was at home, which, I mean, when the Pac-12 teams, and really any team this year in every conference, just looks better at home. I know that's the case for a lot of teams, like I said before. But Oregon State is a much better team at home. Maybe not to the extreme of Utah, but they are a better team at home. And DJU did play well, and UCLA got a big win against Washington State. Then they, lose this one. So I think UCLA is a solid team, but they fell back down to earth. And Oregon State, I mean, if they can win out somehow, maybe they'll still be CFP. That's a long shot, very big long shot. But regardless of that, it still was a good win. And I picked them to win because they were at home, so it's not too surprising.
Yeah. Tough game for Dante Moore, but he's only a freshman. He's like, yeah, I'm only going to play if I'm a freshman. So,
yeah, and he plays better when they're at home. Like you saw the way he played against Washington State, it was better than the way he played against Utah on the road and in this game. So, to me, it's like he plays better when he's more comfortable. That's because he's young. He's going to get better, like you said before.
Yeah. Utah beating Cal.
It's not surprising. I mean, definitely Utah needs to get healthy. If they could get healthy, and if Cam Rising can ever return, then Utah.
They might beat USC next week, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, with Cam Rising, they are a good team. Without him, they can win most of these type of games, especially at home because of their defense. And they have other attributes, but they've been so banged up. It's going to be interesting with the USC game. I mean, is Cam Rising? Have you heard any report whether he'll be back or not? Because I just haven't.
I haven't either. I'm going to do a quick little search.
Mm-hmm. I keep seeing that he could return. It's been like the last 3 or 4 games, but
I'm seeing that he might redshirt this year and play again next year.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad idea. It stinks for the rest of the roster, though, because, I mean, I think Utah had a legitimate shot to, maybe be able to win the Pac-12 again. Not that they were the favorite, but they are a really good team. But their offense is just not there. And I know USC's defense is bad, but Utah's still going to have to be competent offensively to win. We'll get to that game, but they didn't need their offense to be that great in this one, and they beat Cal. I mean, Cal's had moments, but they didn't play well in this one. But it is Rice Eccles.
Yeah, well, their offenses, even though it wasn't great, looked a lot better than NC State's against Duke.
Yeah, that's true. 24-3. I mean, a lot of people are talking about Duke because of the fact that they don't have Riley Leonard, and would they be able to win without him? Well, it shows you why you need a good defense. It's the same with Utah. Why are they 5-1 without Cam Rising? Because of their defense. Why was Duke able to win this game? without Riley Leonard because of their defense. And you look at the fact that for NC State, you scored 40 points, 40-plus points against Marshall last week. And I know Marshall isn't the greatest team in the world, but they're a decent group of 5 team. So it seemed like NC State found something with MJ Morris, that he was an upgrade over Brennan Armstrong. Well, that went out the door. That completely went out the door. You went from scoring, I think it was 48-41, I think the game was, to scoring 3. And I know Duke's defense has been good, but yeah, NC State should have scored more than 3. So it was a good one for Duke, and it just shows you that especially when you have injuries on offense, especially to your starting quarterback, your defense can bail you out. And I'm not talking bad about your Thundering Herd, Mike. I'm just saying that NC State scored 48 points. I said they were a decent group of 5 team. How's that talking bad? Decent group of 5 team. NC State beat them, and then they turn around and do absolutely nothing against Duke. So that maybe shows that Marshall isn't as good as they were the season prior when they beat Notre Dame. I don't think Marshall is as good as they were last year, but I still think they're decent.
This was an ugly game, man. Like, I thought that Joe Milton was fixed from the way he was in Michigan, but clearly he's the same guy. And and Max Johnson also is getting ruined by Jimbo Fisher, man. Jimbo Fisher, what he does to quarterbacks, it's sad. It's sad. But
Connor Wegman played well, I mean, early in the season. And now you look at Max Johnson, he's turned the ball over a lot more than Wegman did.
well, maybe Wegman got down what Jimbo wants his quarterback to do, because Jimbo wants his quarterback to do so much stuff. I just think that it was tough for Max Johnson to memorize everything. Maybe Connor Wegman was able to do that. But
That could be true. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of Jimbo Fisher's offense, but I do know that from my viewpoint that they're not as good with Max Johnson in right now, turning it over more, and that don't win you games. Like if Texas A&M does not turn the football over in this game, they probably win, because Joe Milton, like I saw at one point in the game that, Joe Milton, it was like in the third quarter and he only had like 90 yards passing. So that's bad. I mean, it's rough, and it's a far cry from Hendon Hooker, Tennessee. And I don't know if it was good defense from Tennessee or A&M playing poorly on offense, because I didn't really see much of this game. I was watching more of the Oregon-Washington game, but I think that it's a good win for Tennessee to keep them, in the SEC title conversation. But it wasn't an impressive win, though, because Tennessee is just not playing well on offense. But a win's a win.
yeah. Tennessee special teams came through, though, with that touchdown. So good job to them.
I have to say, though, really quick, that one of my new favorite things with Buckeye Mike is how the descriptive, standpoints of Marshall football. Like, he's like more in depth than Ohio State. Marshall fell short against Georgia State 34-24, game we haven't even got to yet. It goes to show that when you limit Fancher and contain Ali, you can find the blueprint to beat Marshall. They do have some weapons at receiver. I mean, I just love it. I think it's great because, like, no one breaks down Marshall like you might, the way that you're always describing. And, like, I'm going on, Mark, and I'm basically just, I'm bringing up Marshall, especially that NC State game, because you're like, go Marshall, go Marshall. I'm like, no, I'm picking NC State. I think you picked Marshall as well, Will. And I went with NC State. I was pulling for NC State. Like, come on. I don't dislike Marshall at all, but it was just funny. Like how you're telling me, no, Jeffrey, how dare you pick NC State? Marshall's going to win. It was just funny. And you're always describing the Thundering Herd. So I just think it's funny.
Oh, Justin Herbert. Oh, dang it. All right.
We got Texas A&M and Tennessee on the screen. We're talking about the Chargers and we're talking about Marshall. That makes sense.
What the heck happened to the Cougs? This was in Pullman. Okay, is Cam Ward falling apart again? Because he fell apart last year. Like, he was great in the first half of the year. Beat Wisconsin. I mean, I know Wisconsin wasn't that good last year or this year, but I was like, we're like, oh my gosh, Washington State gonna be really good, and then they kind of fell apart again. Are they falling apart again this year, or are they going to be able to pick up the pieces?
Well, it looks to me as of now that they're falling apart. I mean, we're going to have to see more of a sample size, but they're playing ugly football. the last couple weeks, especially this game. And there was a lot of crazy results last week, especially among mid-tier games, like a lot of non-ranked teams. Just the results didn't make sense. But this game, to me, stood out the most because I don't really think anybody picked Arizona. Like, I know Arizona did what they did against USC, but I think most people thought, well, everyone's scoring on USC. So Arizona, just did what, every other team, does against the Trojans, put up a lot of points and whatever. And they're not going to do that against Washington State, especially in Pullman. They're the Cougars defense is going to shut them down. I can say, you mentioned the Pitt quarterback and how Pitt possibly could be looking better with him instead of Phil Dracovic. Well, same thing's going on in Tucson because you had Jay Delora, who played better last year, and he was turnover prone this year. Well, they bring in Noah Fafita. He's like 5'8". And Noah Fafita, I don't know if it's just short-lived lightning in the bottle like Khalil Tate. I don't know if Noah Fafita is the new Mr. October like Khalil Tate was a few years ago, but he's playing good. And Arizona looks a lot better with him than they did with Jane Delora. And they should have beat USC last week. So maybe Arizona's a lot better now, but still, even if Arizona is better, it's no excuse for Washington State to lose this game 44-6. So, yeah, it definitely looks like, Washington State is regressing again. And, I mean, the thing is, though, this point right here that might just make once Wazoo gets the midpoint, it seems like you should bench Cam Ward because he just didn't look good. This point right here shows you how people's perception of a player changes. 2 weeks ago, everybody, Cam Ward is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, potentially. Cam Ward is one of the best in the Pac-12, up there with Nix, Penix, Williams. Maybe he's not as good as those guys, but he's in the conversation. To now, Cam Ward's bad. Cam Ward's regressed. It's crazy just to me watching football how people's perception of a guy can change. Just like that. You even remember Bo Nix when he was at Auburn. Bo Nix is not good. Bo Nix is not reliable. Bo Nix throws picks. He's at Oregon now, and people think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It's wild how that changes.
Yeah. LSU beating up on Auburn. Auburn's just not playing well away from home.
Yeah, LSU, good win for them. Like, even if Auburn's just not a good road team at all this year, it's still good for LSU that they won a game like this because they've been close with every single team that they've played recently. Like, eating the losses and the wins, it's just been close. And they blew them out. And Jayden Daniels is playing well. I know he had a pick. But beside that, he had a good game. And even, again, if it's just Auburn not being that good, LSU finally held a team to a relatively few amount of points. So it was a good win for the Tigers.
Mm-hmm. What the heck happened to Kansas, man? Jason Bean, 2 picks. Like, come on.
But
I wanted Kansas to play Oklahoma as a one-loss team. I wanted that game to be good. But.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I know Bean had 2 picks, but that's why I point out the 5 touchdowns and 410 yards. They put up points. He put up stats. I know they didn't score in the 4th, but to me, it seems more of a defensive problem. And the fact that for whatever reason, Oklahoma State's found something. It's crazy. Like, you talk, this is another team that a couple weeks ago, remember when they lost to South Alabama 33-7?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like fire Mike Gundy. It's Oklahoma State's off a cliff. And now, look, they just beat the Kansas schools, both of them. I know they were both at home, but they're good wins. So, teams change. Maybe Oklahoma State's better. Now, as I say that, they'll probably get blown out next week. But it's crazy, again, watching a team like Oklahoma State go from potentially the worst team in the Big 12 to now they're playing, relatively good football. And they're putting up points. I thought Kansas would win. I picked them. And this was another one of those games and the results that didn't go the way I thought. So, yeah, it does sting, like you said, that Kansas can't be, a one-loss team with some of their bigger games down the rest of the season. But their defense didn't get it done.
Yeah. Disappointing. It was Kentucky, man. Kentucky again. The real was hyping up Kentucky. I was feeding into it a bit.
I think a lot of people were. I remember being on Mark a couple weeks ago, and everyone was saying that Louisville and Kentucky were legit. And I was like, give it time. Just let's see. Let's see with Louisville, and let's see with Kentucky. And again, I'm not saying that I had, any heads up or I knew they were going to collapse, but the thing is on paper, Louisville and Kentucky are not elite football teams. And yes, not elite football teams can surprise people and have great seasons. Like Cincinnati. Part of it was the schedule. But Cincinnati, when they went to the playoff, they went undefeated. They beat Notre Dame and they beat Indiana, the 2 Power 5 teams that they played. Everybody else was a group of 5. And they went undefeated, made the playoff. But then they got shellacked against Alabama. So it's like, was Cincinnati ever in a great team or an elite team? No, they were good, but they weren't elite. And I feel like that's what we have here with Kentucky and with Louisville. They're not great teams. They're good teams that for a stretch, because of the results that people saw, they thought that they were great. And I picked Florida to beat Kentucky. And then, we'll get to Florida, but they finally won a road game. But Kentucky beat them because Florida struggles on the road. But they played bad in these last 2 games. This is a game they should have won. And I don't know how, to be honest with you, how Brady Cook throws for $167 and Missouri scores 38. I don't understand that, but it is what it is. It just doesn't make sense. So I think that Kentucky is still a fairly average SEC team, to be honest. I think that they are a bowl team. They're a 7-5, 8-4 type of team, and that's about it for Kentucky. They're just not better than that.
Devin Leary only threw for $120 with 2 picks, too.
Yeah, Devin Leary is another quarterback that has regressed with what he used to be. I mean, he had the 35 touchdown, 5 pick season at NC State, and now he's playing the way he is right now. So that's wild to me. It's just sometimes quarterbacks don't fit in the new system, or sometimes injuries can affect the QB. Because remember, at the end of the season last year, Devin Leary was banged up, had some injury issues going on. So maybe that affected him. I don't know, but he's not playing as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I only did top 25.
Well, we've only done the top 25 games, and we're already an hour in. That's crazy.
All right, we'll be quick.
Mm-hmm. Middle Tennessee State had no fans, but they won.
Yeah.
Coastal got a decent win. Coastal, this was a good night, to be honest, of football. All 3 of those games. Liberty, I mean, they beat Jacksonville State fairly easily. It's a good win for them. But, yeah, Coastal, that was a win I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I thought App State would win because Coastal been struggling lately. But Grayson McCall finally had, a vintage performance, and they pulled out a win at a tough environment for a group of 5 school. That was a good win for them.
Man, West Virginia.
The 2 games with the absolute craziest endings was Colorado Stanford and West Virginia Houston, by far. The ending, especially this one. I mean, West Virginia's down 35-24. Looks like they're done. Then they scored 2 touchdowns. And the last one was with 12 seconds left. 12 seconds left, you should win. But what does West Virginia do? They pull to Virginia, get an unsportsmanlike, which allows Houston to get better field position on the return. They give up an easy little 8-yard completion, and then the Hail Mary from Donovan Smith all the way down the field. And Houston, somehow, it bounces off a player, and then they catch it. And they beat West Virginia. Now Neil Brown, all that goodwill Neil Brown got is out the door. And Dana Holgerson, he's still, like I said, on the hottest of hot seats, but this might help him stay afloat for now. I don't know, but I thought West Virginia would win, but I don't know if you remember, Will, last week I said to you that I thought there was a shot that West Virginia could blow this game. Yeah. I said that. I thought there was a shot. I picked them to win by like 7. What did I say, 28-21? You were like 63-31 or something like that. West Virginia. I just don't believe in the Mountaineers until they consistently win games, and I did not know they were going to blow it like this. I thought they'd win.
Consistently winning games now, man. They went 4-1. Like they won the. All right.
I mean, I don't blame you for picking them to win by a lot, but man, I just didn't trust them. I picked them, but it was crazy that they lost like that.
Yeah. Michael Pratt, man, clutch at the end with that last touchdown pass. The Trojan killer strikes again.
Yeah, Michael Pratt. Hey, I'm like I said before last week, I'm so glad that he was available to play in this game. That was awesome to see, and he delivered. I mean, Tulane's a good team. They're ranked again this week, so they deserve it. I think that when he's healthy, which he looks to be right now, Tulane is possibly the best Group of 5 team again this season. Maybe. There's other teams that have an argument for that, like Air Force, some other teams, but Tulane is playing good again, and Memphis is not an easy place to play. And they didn't play horribly, but Hennigan had 2 picks, and turnovers make the difference.
Yep.
Shocking that Fresno barely won. I don't know if Mikey Keene played. To be fair, I don't know who played at quarterback in this game. I did not see this game because I was watching Stanford, Colorado, and Tulane. I never really flipped this game on. But if he didn't play, like Mikey Keene, if it was the backup quarterback, that makes more sense. But still the defense, though. What happened? 32 points to Utah State. Usually Fresno's better on defense. So a win's a win for them, but they're playing a bit sluggish right now.
Mm-hmm. And then the game. I went to bed and it was 22-0 Colorado. I'm like, okay, this game isn't worth staying up for. And boy, was I wrong.
Hey, I held out longer than you did because it was 29-0, and I almost turned off the TV. But then Stanford scored, and I was like, I'm going to keep it on. And then they just kept scoring. And I was like, what is happening here? Like 29-0, and social media is like, Colorado's back. Deion, they're blowing out people. It's like, okay. I really looked at Colorado, and they lost this game to Stanford the way that they did. And I know that they still should have won the game. But if you really look at their other games that they've played, they could have lost to TCU. Probably should have lost to TCU. They should have lost to Colorado State. Like Colorado State was running the exact same slant route across the field all game, and Colorado wasn't stopping it. And then you talk about the Arizona State game. It took a field goal at the end for Colorado to win. So I did the math in my head, and that equates to Colorado right now is this close to being 1-6. This close.
They're this close to being 5-2, too. Yeah.
I get that. You can make an argument 6-1. They only lost to USC by 1 score.
Yeah.
I know that when you look at a team that it's hard to, I guess you would say, oh, this team could be this team could be this, because they're not that. I know that Colorado's 4-3. But if you legitimately look at it to say Colorado could be 6-1 or 1-6, what do you think is more likely based on what you've seen, that Colorado could be 6-1 or 1-6?
Probably 1-6.
And that's right there is when I'm looking at Colorado and I understand the hype coming into the season. And I was glad Colorado was winning. I really was. I thought it was a great story. But Colorado's not a great football team. That's clear. They're just not. Their defense is awful. It's going to take Deion some time to build up that side of the ball with more depth, more talent besides just Travis Hunter. And then their offense is basically Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And they do have another good receiver. And sometimes the run game with Dylan Edwards can be all right, but it wasn't in this game. But yeah, they're just not great. And it's not really Deion's fault. It's just going to take time for him to build up the team, get more talent in there, which I'm sure he's going to be able to do. And yes, Mike, Travis Hunter clearly is not to blame for the Stanford loss. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that one guy for Stanford that had 294 receiving yards, which was insane, broke a Stanford record for receiving yards in a game. And Stanford had the biggest comeback in school history in this game from 29-0 down. But Travis Hunter, the ball was on the top of his head. And then, Travis Hunter, could not, get the ball because, like I said, it was on the top of his head. And the Stanford receiver caught it off of his head and scored. But that's not Hunter's fault. And Mike's saying as well that Colorado can still make a bowl game. I mean, yeah, I guess.
I can't see it.
I guess. But, I mean, even if they did, Mike, Colorado still isn't that good. They're better than last year, but that's because Deion brought the talent in that he did. If Colorado didn't have Shedeur Sanders, they'd be awful. They would be a terrible football team.
I can't see 2 wins out of this. I think it's more likely they don't win more games than they make a bowl game, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, UCLA on the road's hard. Oregon State at home. I mean, it's tough to play in Boulder, but Stanford just won. And then you got Arizona. Arizona, the way they're playing, unless, again, Noah Fafita is Mr. October and he's not going to be playing good in November. But if he is still playing well, Arizona's probably better. Washington State, I don't know what in the world are happening with them, but it's still on the road. And then Utah on the road. I mean, that's not happening. Rice-Eccles, that's not happening. And Mike's saying UCLA and Arizona wins. But, I mean, the thing is the point here with me, Mike, it's not about whether they make a bowl game. Yeah, they could. It's not impossible. But it doesn't mean that they're great. The problem with the Colorado hype was that people thought they were great when they never were. They never were great. I mean, they're like we both said, they could be 1-6. They're not 1-6, but if you legitimately look at it, they could be 1-6. I'm glad Colorado's not 1-6. They're just not a great football team yet. It's going to take time. It's going to take years for Deion Sanders to make them better. It's just tough for Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter to be the only good players, and it's just really, really hard for them to win.
I was on mute. Rutgers coming back to beat Michigan State. What a comeback.
Yeah, this right here was a crazy game. I didn't see much of it, but I did flip it for brief when they were down. I was like, what happened to Rutgers? Rutgers is supposed to be a bowl team. And hey, they're one win away. Like, if they beat Indiana, then Buckeye Mike says, oh, no, they are really good, not great. Colorado's not a good team, Mike.
Oh
Colorado
my
is not
gosh,
a good team.
no.
They're not a good team. They have Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. That's it. That is legitimately their entire football team. They're not good. If the definition of good is that they're better than they were before, then yeah, they're good. If the definition is that they go 5-7 or maybe 6-6 and they're good, then yeah, they're good. But they're not good. Like, really, you're saying they're really good. They're not really good. Definitely not really good. I mean, I know what you're saying. Again, they're better than they were, but they're not great. But to get back to Rutgers, they're one win away from making a bowl, and they could very well do that against Indiana this week. The way Indiana's playing, then maybe they can do it. They can get to 6 wins. That'd be huge for Greg Schiano. I mean, he needs it. You know, the fans really need it for Rutgers. They're not a great offensive team. Yes, Mike, absolutely. They're good in the sense of better than last year. Absolutely. For sure, they are better. But they're just not a good team. Not great at all. But I think that Michigan State, you know, has shown that they're not horrible and that they haven't completely given up on the season. But Rutgers needed this win. If they lose this game, that would have just been a detrimental loss to them, you know, in their bowl chances. But now they're in the driver's seat. Like I said, if they can just get another win over a not very good team. So, good win for Rutgers, but they had a scare, major scare.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cincinnati is probably the worst Power 5 team right now. I think.
Yeah, I'm not against that notion at all. I know some people said it was Houston, but Cincinnati is struggling on both sides of the ball. So, and Iowa State, surprisingly, Iowa State's not horrible, actually. The way they're playing, they're not a horrible team at all. They've gotten a lot better from that Ohio loss. I'll have to say that Oklahoma State and Iowa State are the two teams that have bounced back, to me, harder than any other team. After Iowa State lost to Ohio and Oklahoma State lost to South Alabama, I thought they were both going to be awful, but they're actually decent so far.
JMU might go 12-0 and still can't make a bowl.
Yeah, that's just, to me, I think it's not fair if you transition to the FBS or Division I in basketball and you still can't play in the tournament or make a bowl. It's not fair. I mean, if you win the games and you're in the FBS, you should make a bowl. If you're in college basketball and you win your conference tournament, you should be able to make the NCAA tournament. Bellarmine should have made the NCAA tournament. It's only fair. So I think that James Madison, you know, deserves to make a bowl. It's kind of sad that they can't. You're good, Mike. I mean, I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I'm just saying what I think and you're saying what you think. It's great conversation. I mean, you're not absolutely wrong and I'm not absolutely wrong or right either. We both have valid points.
What the heck, Maryland? Like, I cannot believe Maryland lost this game.
Again,
They
this is
always
one of those
lose
results.
one game they shouldn't lose. Like last year, they lost to Minnesota. This year, they lost to Illinois.
This is one of those results, like I said, that blew my mind because we just ran over this one last week. We just ran over like, oh, Maryland's going to win. And I mean, Mark, like everybody's thinking they're the fourth best team in the Big Ten. Like it's the top three, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Clearly they're the top three in whatever order people think. And then it was Maryland and then everyone else.
Is it actually Iowa? Is it actually Iowa than everyone else?
It could be just because of the fact that their defense, is the most important position group of any football team in college football. Maybe besides USC's offense, except Notre Dame game. If it wasn't for Iowa's defense, they would be a 2-win team every year. Their defense wins them games. They have no offense. I literally, when I made my video on K. McNamara, I'm surprised I didn't get more pushback on it, but I guess most people agree with it. I said in the video, when McNamara was out with the injury, it's not going to make a difference because their offense is so bad with him or without him, they're going to win games with the defense, and they're doing it. I picked Wisconsin because I thought, hey, Wisconsin's just good enough offensively. No, they're not good enough offensively. And you know what? I was going to win all these other games and go like 9-3 with absolutely no
What if
offense.
Iowa goes 11-1?
If they do go 11-1, and you're going to see it online, Iowa's legit. We're a great football team, and it's like, no, you're not, Iowa. You are not a great football team. You are a team with a great side of the ball. A great side of the ball. Your defense is absolutely, when it wants to be, elite. Fantastic. But you are not a great team because a great team has to be at least average on the other side of the ball. And your offense is abysmal. And when the Big Ten has this expansion, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, it will be very hard for Iowa to win. Very hard. Because they're going to need offense to win. Like, even if their defense holds these teams to 20 points, you still got to score 20. They beat Wisconsin 15-6. So that's my biggest thing for Iowa. They're getting by because they've been in the West, and the West is horrible. But when Iowa has to be in the gauntlet of the whole entire 18-team Big Ten, they're not going to get by with just that defense anymore. And if Phil Parker ever leaves Iowa, it's all over for the Hawkeyes as long as Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz are still in charge. Because
Brian's not going to be in charge. They're not averaging 25 points.
Well, I mean, is that true, though?
Yes.
I mean, are they really going to get rid of him?
It is written in his contract that he must not be the offensive coordinator.
But I've seen people say that, oh, he's just going to get like a reduction in his pay or whatever. I mean, is he really going to be fired? Because you might as well already give him the pink slip because they're not going to get to the 25 points. I mean, is it true that he's not going to be retained as offensive coordinator at the end of the season if they don't average 25 points? Because they're not going to get there.
I'm pretty sure it is. I want to look up Brian Ferentz' contract. I'm going to look it up.
I mean, it's the most convoluted contract I've ever heard in my life. It's complicated.
Tracking Brian Ferentz' contract, Week 7 update. This is an article. Here, I'm just going to share the tab.
Mm-hmm. The highly unusual contract for Brian with the Pacific. 25 points per game objective drafted up by Gary Barr before his retirement, where it was then highly publicized for some reason, made an already tough job a whole lot tougher. Now Brian, the odds are down to profile transfer McNamara and all making that points per game objective significantly tougher. Well, I mean, the problem with that, though, is that I get you're talking about the injuries and everything and all that, but it's the scheme. You had McNamara, and your offense was still bad. Like McNamara was only throwing like 120 yards. And I understand that some people were saying that McNamara was injured. I get that because they were saying, oh, he was injured in the preseason and then it carried over. But the reason their offense is poor is because of the scheme. It doesn't matter who's at QB, I don't think. I mean, if you had someone supremely talented, maybe it'd be a bit better. But with that offensive system, it's hard to win. I don't know. We'll see what they do with Ferentz, Brian Ferentz. But again, it makes no sense.
With remaining games with Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, and Nebraska, Brian needs just one more win to hit the 7-win mark outlined in his contract. Hitting that 7-win mark is going to force Iowa's new athletic leadership, starting with new AD Bethko, to ask themselves, is winning the goal or without a certain way with the style points for being sexy more important?
Well, I mean, they're going to win 7 games. So, I mean, if that's the objective, then Brian Ferentz is in the clear. But then that just ties back into Kurt Ferentz's point that as long as we're winning, it's okay. Which, to me, that's not okay. Because my thing is, I've said this to Iowa fans before. And I know they know this. They do. I mean, they watch their team more than I do. But if they had a good offense, like not even a great offense, just a top 50 offense, Iowa would be great. They'd be such a great team because their defense is so good. But they've never had a good offense. In the last 10 years, they have never had a good offense. Probably their best offensive team was when they had Nate Stanley. And that wasn't even a good offensive team. But I think, to me, that Iowa is just it's a disadvantage. They've been misused for the last 10 years. The defensive players, they've just gone wasted because they have such great defensive performances and they can't win.
Yeah,
they can't win the big game.
Right now, Brian's at 21 points per game, so it's not looking good.
Well, I mean, the thing is that's partially inflated by the 41 they scored against Western Michigan. And my thing is, even with the clause of saying that he needs to at least have 25 points, that's still not good. I mean, I think that with Iowa, obviously it's Kurt Ferentz's son. I mean, I understand that, but you got to want to do better. You have to want to be able to be better than you currently are. And Iowa will forever be just a solid enough program because of one side of the ball. It's remarkable they win the way they do, but it's almost like they're impressed with that. It's great, but you could be better. If your offense was just good, you'd be so much better. You'd be one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country every single season. Instead, you're not because you don't have offense.
So, yeah. So, failing to do either would result in a terminated contract on June 30th, 2024. So,
that's crazy. It's the weirdest contract ever, and the details and everything. But it is what it is. I'm just, for me, I was an enigma. I mean, it's not like it matters to me whether they win or not. But I mean, I just feel bad for their defense that they could be such a better team.
They wish they had Graham Mertz looking like a Heisman Trophy winner against South Carolina. Man, South Carolina played bad on defense in this game.
I was shocked that South Carolina lost because, like me and you both said, with the way that Florida, has been playing on the road in the last, few seasons, it was like there's no way they're going to win, even though South Carolina have been struggling. But somehow they squeak it out because, like you said, it was an absolutely abysmal day from the Gamecocks defense. So it was a good win for Florida that they pulled it out. But yeah, I was shocked that South Carolina couldn't, do a better job to beat Florida because, like I said, Florida's been a horrible road team. But they got a decent win finally on the road. Mike says if Iowa wins the West, there's no point of showing up to Indy no matter who wins the East, the Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, Indy Lions. I would say, Mike, that you could say if Iowa wins the West, but that's if anyone wins the West. Someone's going to win the West. So, I mean, if it's Ohio State versus any of them, if it's Michigan versus any of them, they're going to beat them. Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, it doesn't matter who it is. the three teams in the East are better than all those teams by a mile. So it's not going to matter who it is. I mean, the West has never won. The West has never won the Big Ten championship game. It's not going to happen.
They've gotten close. They've got 2015. 2015 was close. That was probably Iowa almost beat Michigan State that year. That was probably in 2016. 2015 and 2016 were, I think, the closest that the West got.
The ironic thing about it, they were playing Michigan State, though. They weren't playing Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan. When it's been those
Michigan
teams,
State made the playoff that year. So
I know, but you know what I'm saying. Like, I just think that when you have Ohio State and
2017, I wasn't sure if it was 2017 or 2018. I was getting those games confused. I knew it was one of those, but yeah, those 3 years.
I just don't think Ohio State was as good back then, though. 2017, 2018, Ohio State wasn't as good. I understand that it's because that they lost to Purdue and Iowa in those seasons, but still, you think about Ohio State right now, how they're just destroying every single team that they play besides the Michigan and Penn State games, which most of the time they beat Penn State.
Well, I feel like those teams also got worse. It's both. I think it's both. Ohio State got better, and Wisconsin and Iowa got worse.
I agree with you 100%. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 2020, the COVID season, even with Justin Fields, they almost lost to Northwestern, though. That's the game. That's the one game. I think even when Ohio State had a great quarterback, they still almost lost.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Ramsey and Northwestern, that they played well that season, but Ohio State was still better. But yeah, that's a good example. But it's still, the point is that the West is worse than the East, and the East has won every year, even if there's been close exceptions. So I don't know. And Mike said there was no Olave, which, well, I mean,
still, even without Chris Olave, even without, I hate how Ohio State fans use this excuse. Alabama fans do that. They lost the game just because they were missing one of their players. They still have a lot more talent than the other team they should be playing. They shouldn't, I don't know. Sorry.
You're good. I mean, it's not wrong. Any team can use an excuse. I mean, I could say that Indiana would have beat Tennessee and Ole Miss in both the 2019 and 2020 bowl games if Michael Penix wasn't injured. Yeah. And I mean, how wrong is that to say? Indiana lost to Tennessee by 1, and they lost to Ole Miss by 6. Mm-hmm. With Michael Penix, yeah, they're going to win those games. I could say that. But then you could rebuttal me and say, well, Indiana still should have won those games even without Michael Penix. It's true. But I think with Michael Penix, they could have won. But yeah, injuries do affect, especially QB position. But to your point, it's one receiver with Ohio State, and Ohio State still should have beat Northwestern by more. It's not like Fields was out. It'd be different if Fields was out.
Yeah. But all right, we're just gonna go to the previews now.
Yeah, I know. It's like we're just like rambling about execution and coaching and everything and whiny fan bases or whatever. It's hilarious. Mike says he never uses injuries as an excuse. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I think you maybe have before, but maybe you're not anymore. I don't know. That's funny.
We have CUSA Tuesday. Liberty's probably going to win the conference.
I think it's crazy that Middle Tennessee State keeps playing every single game on Tuesday or Wednesday. They don't play on Saturday. I mean, that's partially probably why they don't have a home crowd at all, because it's always during the week. I mean, sometimes you can have week games that there's big crowds for teams, but they just have no one there. But now they're on the road. I mean, we've seen it all this season with crazy results where teams that are a lot worse than other team are winning, but Liberty should win. That doesn't mean that they can't lose, because you see Illinois beat Maryland, and Maryland was like a 16-point favorite or whatever, but Liberty should win. I'll go with Liberty to win 28-10. They should win, but you never know.
This should be good, too. Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State. Western Kentucky's 2 losses are Detroit and Ohio State.
Yeah, this is actually a sneaky game here. And Western Kentucky is one of those teams that, they've been, I guess you would say, on a lot of more of a national radar than other Group of 5 teams for their quarterback play with the Bailey Zappies and Austin Reeds putting up insane stats. And their offense doesn't look as good this season, but you still see Austin Reed, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks, 1,665 yards. So it's still really good, just not record-breaking or anything. and they are favored by 7.5. Jacksonville State's not a bad team, but they've kind of slipped lately, and that wasn't a great loss the way that they lost to Liberty, because Liberty barely beat Sam Houston. And then they turn around and kind of beat Jacksonville State handily. I'll go with Western Kentucky to win 35-27.
Oh, here we go. Marshall.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Rice in that first one by probably 7. JT Daniels is playing fairly well. They've been inconsistent, but I'll go with Rice. But yes, James Madison and Marshall, 6-0. You got 6-0 James Madison and 4-2 Marshall. And this is a game where I feel like James Madison could lose because of the fact that they're undefeated, and this is probably like one of the tougher tests that they faced. Marshall's not a bad team. They're coming off a tough loss, so they're going to want to bounce back and win. But I'm looking at Cam Fancher, the guy, Mike definitely talked about all the time. He has 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. That's not a great TD to interception ratio. And Ollie's a good back. But I think James Madison is a really solid team. It's going to be a good one, but I'll go with the Dukes to beat the Thundering Herd 31-24.
Yeah, I'll go 34-21. I think that the Dukes will pull away late. It'll be a good game.
Yeah, it should be close. And I definitely see Marshall pulling off the upset, but James Madison, like I said, I just think they're a little bit better than Marshall, and the quarterback for Marshall's too many mistakes.
Oh, not a great Friday game. Temple's not doing too hot.
That's it. That is the only Friday night game, SMU and Temple. There's usually like a late Mountain West game on CBS Sports Network or FS1 or something. That's crazy.
I guess maybe because of baseball. I don't know.
Probably. That's a good point. I mean, I don't really usually look at like other sports schedules as much, so I wouldn't have known that. But yeah, definitely football or baseball is, key as well for a lot of people.
And we got the big game of the week, Penn State versus Ohio State.
Now, this is a big noon kickoff. This is a big game for both teams. It's a big game every year, but it does feel like that the stakes are higher for both of these teams than some previous years. Like there's some years where Ohio State plays Penn State, and it's like, you know what? Ohio State should win by about 17. Penn State's good, but they're not better. Ohio State's favored by 4. And I don't know if that line's going to shift, but for the fact that they're at home versus Penn State and they're only favored by 4, that shows you how high the bettors are on Penn State. The thing, though, with Penn State is Drew Aller. He's played good at home for the most part, but when he's been on the road, he has struggled, particularly that Illinois game. And even against Northwestern, it's not like he put up crazy stats. They did end up winning that game handily. But I think that's the key. Can Drew Aller finally play a good game on the road? And can their run game get going? Because that's one thing for Penn State. I think with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, I feel like a lot of Nittany Lions fans thought that their run game was going to be elite this season, and it really hasn't been. I think part of it's been the O-line. Maybe their O-line hasn't developed as much as that, Nittany Lion fans were expecting. I think that's part of it because I still think Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are good backs, but they're not running the football well enough against worse opponents to think that they're really going to run the ball well against Ohio State.
Same with Ohio State, hasn't been running the ball either, though. That's the thing.
And I was about to flip that across to say it's the same way. Ohio State, you've got a run game that's not great. And, Travion Henderson has been banged up still and just has not looked like his freshman self. Their other backs just really aren't getting it done as well. And then you look at Kyle McCord. He's played well. Like the 11 touchdowns, 2-1 pick is a good, touchdown to pick ratio. He's thrown for 1,600 yards. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is fantastic. I mean, he single-handedly, can win most, games for Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think
not against Notre Dame, though. Not against Notre Dame. I'll say that.
For sure. But
I know we lost, but Kyle McCord didn't do much.
That was
not Kyle
first
McCord,
big
Marvin
road
Harrison.
game for Kyle McCord, though. I mean, I know they played at Indiana, but is anybody saying that's a big road environment? This was, that was a fantastic road environment. And Ohio State should have lost. Yes, they should have lost that game. I will say it forever that they should have lost that game. Notre Dame should have won, but they didn't, unfortunately, for the Fighting Irish. And McCord did not play that well, but he got it done when they needed to on that last drive. But they're at home. I haven't seen enough from Drew Aller that, they're going to be able to, have a great passing attack on the road because he struggled, doing that in those other games against Northwestern and Illinois. If he was more experienced for this, I would say Penn State would win, but I'll go with Ohio State to win 31-28. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think Penn State's going to keep it close with their defense. That is good. I didn't mention the defense. Penn State does have a good defense, and they've got, NFL talent at all three levels of their defense. But I do think Kyle McCord being at home and the fact that he has played better, I would say, overall than Aller, especially when Aller's on the road. Even with the struggling run game, Marvin Harrison should have a big game. Even though Penn State defense is good, I think Ohio State will win a close one.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I meant to say, I know I said McCord first, but I have to say this. I meant Harrison. Harrison only had 32 yards against Notre Dame. But anyways, I just think that Ohio State will win this game because the receivers are just better than Penn State's. Like, Penn State's receivers just have trouble, like, similar to Notre Dame, like, they have trouble getting open. I think it'll be a great game, but that's really the only thing that I see separating the two teams right now. So I'm gonna go Ohio State 31, Penn State 28.
I think that might have been the exact same score.
Wait, crap. It was okay. Dang it. Okay,
no, you're good. You got the same score. I mean, it sounds accurate. Great minds think alike, as Jackson would say. I mean, if you want a different score, it don't matter.
Whatever. I'll keep it then if you don't just nothing.
Now, if it was at Penn State, would you pick the Nittany Lions?
I still don't trust James Franklin, okay? I'm not taking James Franklin.
So even if it was at Ohio, at Penn State, you would still pick Ohio State. That's funny. So it's like we're both saying a 3-point win for the Buckeyes. But if you take it on the road and it was at Penn State, we'd still be taking Ohio State. That's interesting. That's crazy.
Yeah, just because I can't trust James Franklin in close games.
I get it. I mean, like I said, I think if Drew Aller are more experienced, I would possibly pick them, and you never know. But I think Ohio State, like you said, especially the receivers are better. The other positional groups are similar, but I think Ohio State will win. It should be a great game. Hopefully it's as close to as good of a game as Oregon-Washington was last week.
Mm-hmm. We're going to skip this one. Oklahoma big.
Oklahoma should easily beat UCF. I mean, we've seen weird stuff happen, but Oklahoma's off a bye after beating Texas. And UCF, Gus Malzahn just got a contract extension, but it was at a bad time.
Why?
They're struggling right now. Like, they just can't stop anybody. Their defense is bad, and their offense has regressed. I don't know what's really going on with the QB position. John Rice Plumlee was playing better early in the season. I don't know if he's banged up. I haven't really paid attention to UCF, but yeah, Oklahoma's going to win big. Should.
It might be weird because Dylan Gabriel is going back to UCF. That's the one thing that might.
Well, they are at home. He's just playing against us.
I know, but yeah, sorry. That's what I meant to say.
You're good. Mm-hmm. I mean, that could make a difference, but I mean, sometimes, it makes you play better. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. Air Force and Navy should be interesting.
This is a game I could see Air Force losing. Because, they're beating everybody, but now that they're playing, another, member of the armed forces and they have similar styles, anything can happen in these type of games. Navy could win, and it's on the road. But Air Force, they've been playing better than Navy, and they've been executing this style of offense better than Navy, and they actually pass. Like, the Air Force quarterback is 468 passing yard, 4 touchdowns, so they have the capability of.
I mean, it's called Air Force. They should put the ball in the air.
Well, I mean that it's a completely different meaning with what the armed forces do, but yeah, they do put the ball in the air more than Navy. I think Air Force will squeak it out 28-24, but Navy. They can make it interesting because these type of games always are.
Yeah, I think Navy will cover, so I'll go 20-17.
Sounds good.
Oh man, who's gonna get a win?
This is the best noon game ESPN could find. 2 winless teams in the SEC. Unbelievable. We got Mississippi State at Arkansas. I don't know. Arkansas is better than 2-5. Like, I know Alabama didn't play their best, but Arkansas was competitive. And then you talk about the LSU game. Arkansas was competitive. Are they finally is it gonna pay off? And Mississippi State, their defense has been awful this season. And with, unfortunately, as I always say, rest in peace to Mike Leach. And that Mike Leach was Mississippi State. The air raid. They are not throwing the ball nowhere near as much as they did before, and they're trying to run the football. It don't work in the SEC. Their O-line is not good enough to run the football as much as they're trying to. Will Rogers is the key. I just think Mississippi State's style of play is not where it should be. They're trying to change it. It's not working. I think Arkansas is finally going to get a win. I think that they're better than Mississippi State despite the worst record. I'll go with Arkansas to win 31-21.
Yeah. I'll go Arkansas 35-17. I just don't think Mississippi State's good at all. I think they could be the worst Power 5 team when the year's said and done. I know they did beat Arizona, but that was before they changed into FIDA. So.
Wait, did you say that you think what you said Mississippi State's the worst what?
They may be the worst Power 5 team by the end of the year. I know Vandy's probably
Mississippi. You think Mississippi State will end up being the worst Power 5 team?
They could be.
You've got Virginia. I know Stanford just won, but like Stanford's still bad. Arizona State, Michigan State, Illinois, Indiana. Don't like lumping them in there, but Indiana's struggling. I mean, I just don't know if Mississippi State's the worst. I know what you mean though. They've been rough, but they're still an SEC team. It'd be kind of hard. Jackson says Virginia's the worst.
Well, Virginia, yeah, I don't know. It could be Virginia.
You could be right. It could be Mississippi State. That'd be crazy if Mississippi State really was the worst, though.
Here we go. Rutgers, Indiana. Can Rutgers finally make a bowl by getting to 6 wins? Because they did make a bowl in 2021. But this would be the first time Rutgers would get to 6 wins in a season since 2014.
Yeah, Indiana has been playing awful football the last couple weeks. They got destroyed against Michigan, which is expected. But you would have liked to have seen more of a fight there. They got blown out against Maryland, and we saw what Maryland just did against Illinois. I know, again, teams don't always play as good or bad as the mean, but still, you just look at the fact that Indiana did bad in that game. They barely beat Akron. They've been playing, I would say, worse since the Louisville game and the Ohio State game where they were competitive. It's like they've gotten worse. And this is a make or break game. If Indiana loses this game, their bowl hopes are done. If Rutgers wins, they make a bowl. So it's great for them. It could be one of those games, though, Rutgers struggles Michigan State. I don't know if that will carry over, but Rutgers, they know that they can make a bowl, and that might make them play sluggish. But Indiana's been so bad the last few weeks. They got a new offensive coordinator. Maybe some of the changes, you'll see it, manifest in this game that you didn't see last week against Michigan. I don't know. It's at home, and I think that the crowd will be pretty decent because it is homecoming for Indiana and all that, and it's a game that Indiana fans probably think that they can win. I hate to do it because I've never picked Rutgers to beat Indiana ever in my life. In anything. I don't even think in basketball, but I actually will take Rutgers to win over Indiana 24-21. I'm not seeing enough from Indiana. They can win this game. They have the talent to win, but the play calling's been awful. And who's going to be the QB? They can't decide who's the QB. Against Michigan, they played Taven Jackson, Brendan Sorsby, and Dexter Williams might be back for this game. He was questionable in the last game. So it could be Dexter Williams out there, the guy that beat Michigan State last year. So maybe he can come back, but off an injury, will he be ready? I don't even know who's going to be a quarterback for Indiana. There's just too many question marks. Rutgers, their offense isn't very good, but at least they have a quarterback that they know is going out there, and Indiana don't. I'll go with Rutgers.
I can't see Indiana scoring many points against this. Rutgers has a good defense. Their offense is a little better than Iowa's. But their defense is not as good as Iowa, but still pretty good. So I just can't see Rutgers. I can't see Indiana scoring many points in this game. So I'm going to go Rutgers 24, Indiana 3. I'm sorry, man. I want to have more faith in the Hoosiers, but they just played so freaking bad, man.
I get it. And I mean, it's not looking good for Tom Allen. I mean, the Indiana used to be competitive. That was the calling card for the Hoosiers. Even if they didn't win, they would be competitive against better teams. They were always competitive. And now when they're at home and they're an underdog to Rutgers and like we don't even have any faith that they can win, that's not good. That just doesn't inspire any confidence for the future for Tom Allen and Indiana at all. I will reiterate, Indiana has talent. I know that no one's seen it, but Jalen Lucas is a legitimately good player. Cam Camper is a good player at wide receiver, but they're not getting utilized. They're underutilized because the QB play, whether it's the play calling or just the inexperience of the two QBs, it's been bad. And that's why they're not having success. If they had a quarterback, like if Michael Penix was still in Indiana, I know that he would not be putting up the stats he is at Washington, but they'd be better because he'd be able to get the ball to those guys at least. They're not bad players, but I'm with you. I just think that Indiana is just they're just not good enough at the quarterback position to utilize the talent they have. And I think they'll fall short. I mean, they if they beat Rutgers, they can make a bowl if they beat Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue. It's not impossible. Tom Allen can save this thing, but they haven't shown that, to anybody that they could possibly do it. So if they beat Rutgers, I'll change my mind on Indiana and still give them hope to make a bowl, but they have not looked good. So I'm going to go Rutgers.
I'm worried about Indiana getting any. I want Indiana to at least get to 4 wins, but to make it look kind of respectable, 4-8, not horrible. But do you think they can get to 4?
They should. I mean, do I think that they can get to 4 the way that they're playing right now? I'm questioning it. I don't really believe it that much, but they should. I mean, before Illinois beat Maryland, they've been playing bad. And Michigan State with the coaching situation, the fact that Indiana beat them last year, that they should be able to beat them again at home. But the way that they're playing right now, like I said, it doesn't give you any, any hope that they'll do it. But should they win 4 or 5 or even 6 games? Yes. But will they? I'm not confident in that right now. And we'll see what they do against Rutgers.
All right. Okay. I don't know, man. I'm rooting for the Hoosiers, but it's like, it gets so hard. Like,
I'm with you. I mean, Tom Allen's job is about to be on the line soon if they keep losing, and I think that they're better than Rutgers, but they haven't played like it, so it just makes it impossible to pick them. We'll see what happens. I'll definitely be tuning into that one.
Georgia Tech, can they use that momentum from the bye week to make a bowl?
Yeah, I have no idea what to make of either team because, I mean, Boston College has had games where they've been horrible, but then they've shown up at other times. And then you talk about Georgia Tech. They've had some awful performances, but then they, beat Wake and they beat Miami, even though Miami completely gave away the game with not kneeling the ball. So is Georgia Tech, in my mind, better than Boston College? Yes. But I could see Boston College winning this game. Both these teams are just very inconsistent. But
both of these teams, this is big for both these teams' bowl hopes because for Georgia Tech to make a bowl game, they need to beat Boston College, Virginia, and Syracuse. Which I don't know, they can do, like, especially because all 3 games are at home, except Virginia. Sorry, Virginia's away, but.
Yeah, they should make a bowl because Georgia Tech, I think, is better than those teams. But they've been inconsistent, and it's hard to trust them. So I'll go with Georgia Tech by 3 to win 28 or 27-24. But I don't trust either team. So I can see it going either way.
And for Boston College, they need to beat Georgia Tech. You've got Georgia. They have a path. They could win it. They just need to win 3 out of these next 4. Or I guess 4 out of – I mean, I guess I could Pitt's a winnable game too. So definitely
the funny thing to me with a team like Boston College is looking at that schedule. I mean, we talked about this, I think, last week. If they had to beat Northern Illinois, they could have been like 9-3. And it's like, is Boston College good? I mean, like I said before, they'd have been like one of the worst 9-3 teams of all time. I mean, if they legitimately went 9-3, that schedule is awful. And like, there have been, think about it, Will, if Boston College really went 9-3, and there will be people saying Boston College should be ranked, Boston College should be considered a good team. Look who they've played. Horrible teams. No, Boston College is not good. They're not a good football team. And if they went 8-4 somehow, or 7-5, whatever, or 8-4, because if it was by one of the other ones, they'd be 8-4, and people be like, "Oh, the coach has saved his job. Hafley has saved his job." Does that really? Does people think that's good though? Like, I understand that a record is a record, but legitimately, there are 5-7 football teams from other conferences that I believe are better than Boston College if somehow Boston College went 8-4.
I think James Madison's better than Boston College.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think that a team like Arkansas is better than Boston College. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think Arkansas is better than Boston College. Even if Boston College went 8-4 and Arkansas went 4-8, I think Arkansas is better.
Baylor, Cincinnati. Oh man, this is another rough one.
Who are you supposed to pick? Like, Baylor has just been all over the place. Like, they've had a pulse in a couple games, but in other games they've just been flat. Cincinnati, I mean, Emory Jones' touchdown to pick ratio is not good at all. I mean, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks. Not pretty. I don't know. It's at Cincinnati. I'm not going to say their stadium. You know, last week we had some chat comments. I'm not even going to bother. But I think that I'm going to let you go first. I'm not even going to bother picking first.
Every time I pick Baylor to win, they lose. So I'm picking Cincinnati because of that.
I'll go with Cincinnati 21-20. I'll just go
Cincinnati 31-28.
I don't know. Both teams are not great, and both teams have been unreliable. And I've picked both teams to win games that they haven't. So we'll go with the home team, 21-20.
Memphis should beat UAB.
Yeah, I'll go with Memphis by 10.
Well, I guess Ohio over Western.
ECU, I'll go by 3, even though the quarterback has a 1 touchdown to 6 pick ratio. Absolutely terrible, but we'll give ECU. We'll give ECU the win. Yeah, Mike, I agree. I said the stadium name just like that. I said that last week, but then people were saying, you know, I said it right. Thanks.
Man, that's bad. 1 touchdown to 6 interceptions.
Yeah, it's insane. And the fact that Charlotte's leading rusher at 320 yards is more than anybody ECU has. So how is ECU even favored here? Like, I have no idea, but I'll give the Pirates the benefit of the doubt. Dowdy Ficklin will have some fans there. They'll win by 3.
I don't even know, man. I'm not even going to try. I'll pick Bowling Green to beat Akron.
Look at Connor Bazelak, the former Indiana Missouri quarterback. 4 touchdowns to 6 picks. What happened to Bazelak? He was pretty good at Missouri. He wasn't bad. That 4 touchdowns, 6 picks. I'll go with Bowling Green to win by 3 again, but now I'll go by 10. I forgot Akron's quarterback's out for the season, so they're not as good as they were before. I'll go by 10.
Oregon and Washington State, 20 points for Oregon State. I mean, for Oregon, not Oregon.
This is one of those games to me where Oregon is either going to blow them out, you know, because they lost to Washington, they want to bounce back and, you know, prove how good of a team that they are, or this is a game that they struggle in, you know, a little bit of a hangover from the loss. And Washington State, coming off the 2 losses, are they going to bounce back and play better? They could, but it's in Autzen, and Cam Ward has not been good on the road. And Bo Nix, I just think he's, you know, too consistent. He's put up great stats. 17 touchdowns, 1 pick. That's almost perfect. And I think that Oregon is going to want to show, you know, the college football world that they are still a top 10 team, that they do not, you know, deserve to fall out of that status, even with the loss to Washington. I think they'll win 38-17.
Yeah, I'll go 35-24. I think maybe the Cougs will show some fight. But Ducks will.
They could. I mean, I definitely could see them playing better. It's one of those weird games where they could just snap out of it and have a great game and win, but I don't see it. I think Oregon will play well, but you never know.
The third Saturday in October.
Tennessee at Alabama. Now, this game right here, Alabama is only favored by 9.5, and Alabama was favored by about 19.5 to beat Arkansas. So that's a bit interesting. Tennessee, though, their offense is going to be the key, determining factor on whether they win or lose this game. If Joe Milton out there is throwing a couple of interceptions and he's only throwing for $160, they're not going to win because there's no way that Alabama is going to be worse on offense than that. Even with Milroe's inconsistencies, he's going to put up more stats than that. And Alabama has been pretty decent against the run this season, for their standards. So I don't think Tennessee is necessarily going to really to run the football that well here. It's on the road, and it's a rivalry game. So I think they're going to play hard. But again, Joe Milton on the road has struggled. And even at home, he struggled. He's not playing great football really in general, and he's throwing a lot of picks. I think that's going to be the difference. If he wasn't, making a lot of mistakes, I think there's a shot that Tennessee can win. Alabama's been a bit inconsistent. They haven't been great. And Milroe, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks isn't awful, but only 1,397 yards in 7 games. Granted, he didn't play in one of them against South Florida, but still, I think Alabama's just better. I'll go with the Crimson Tide to beat the Volunteers 31-23.
Yeah, I'll go 34-20 Tide. I just can't trust Joe Milton at all.
Yeah, Jackson says, I hope Bama gets revenge against Tennessee, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to the Vol in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world to me, but it would mean that Joe Milton's playing well. And he hasn't, I guess, inspired enough people to believe that he will. So we'll see.
Missouri, South Carolina, I feel like it's kind of just falling apart. I mean, you can't lose to Florida at home because no one loses to Florida at home. Even Vandy beat Florida at home. So.
Yeah, Brady Cook is actually playing great. I mean, look at those stats: 2,046 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks. They got a pretty good run game. It's at home. I mean, do I trust Missouri completely? No, but Drinkwitz has been doing better than Neil Brown of saving his job. I think it'll continue. Give me Missouri by 10, 34-24.
Yeah, I think Missouri's just going to blow them out. I don't trust South Carolina anymore. I'm going 41-14.
You never know. Just something tells me with these SEC teams that sometimes they keep it closer than people think.
Yeah.
Tulane
should beat North Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. The Florida Rosedale.
And Iowa's only favored by basically the home spread, 3.5. That's wild right there. You got a 3-3 football team in Minnesota that, for the most part, has not played well at all against Iowa.
And Kalia Kogmanis, 4 touchdowns. I mean, no, sorry, not 4. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
Yeah, I know Iowa's struggling on offense, but I'm surprised they're not favored by more in this game. I know that they don't score that much, but Minnesota's offense is almost as bad as Iowa's. You can make an argument it is as bad as Iowa's. It's probably a little better. I don't even know. They're both bad. Minnesota can run the football a little bit, but is that really going to matter against Iowa's defense? It's at Iowa. And another thing as well about this rivalry is that Iowa has dominated it lately. Because I picked Minnesota to win last year when it was in Minneapolis, and Iowa still won because of turnovers. Like, Iowa got a couple big turnovers, and one that a defender ran all the way back for a game-winning field goal that I thought PJ Fleck was going to blow a gasket. He was so mad. He thought he had the game. And it's like they turn it over, and Iowa kicks a game-winning field or something like that. So, I mean, it's going to be low scoring. I mean, the over-under is 32. And anybody that takes the over is very daring. That's about all I can say. Very daring. So I'll go with Iowa to beat Minnesota. We'll go with the score they had last week, 15-9.
I'll go Iowa 13, Minnesota 10.
It's going to be low scoring. It's going to be a rock fight. It's not going to be pretty, but you know what Iowa's going to do? They're going to beat Minnesota.
Yeah.
What they always do.
Mm-hmm. Well, can Wisconsin bounce back against Illinois?
What are we supposed to do here? You think Wisconsin's not bad? They blow out Purdue, and you're like, you know what? Wisconsin's got a little bit of offense, and then what did they do last week? I know it's Iowa, but they put up 6 at home. And now you've got Illinois, who we thought possibly was the worst team in the Big Ten. And what do? They beat Maryland on the road. So it's like, what are you even supposed to make of this one? I mean, if you had said this game 2 weeks ago, I'd have picked Wisconsin for sure. But now it's like both teams aren't very good. I mean, Illinois showed life last week. Altmaier still has 8 touchdowns to 9 picks.
I think it was 6-9, so it's better. It's 8-9 now.
Yeah, I mean, because of the Maryland game. I'll let you pick first.
I think Brett Bielema is not going to lose to his former team. I could regret this, but I'm going to go Illinois 24-21.
I'll go with Wisconsin 24-21. If the Badgers lose, though, I don't know what to say. But I'll go with Wisconsin. Neither team inspires me at all.
Neither of these teams inspire me at all either.
I'll go with Nebraska by 3. I said I would not pick Nebraska till they won, and they won. So I'll go Nebraska 24-21.
Who did Nebraska beat? Oh, they beat Illinois by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go Nebraska. I'll go 28-14 Nebraska.
And since they've made the QB change with Harbor, they're running the football better, so I think that's going to make a difference. I know Northwestern has been, slightly decent at times. Like, they have a pulse at times, but I think Nebraska will win.
Yeah.
By the way, I appreciate you for sticking it out, Mike. You said you were going to get some sleep, but you're still hanging out. I appreciate it.
No, I don't think
Wisconsin team beats or even competes with Ohio State. No chance.
No.
Not even in Camp Randall. No chance. South Florida by 1.
I think Pitt will win with their new quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Wake Forest has been horrible. I mean, they miss Sam Hartman more than almost any team misses a QB. Maybe not as much as Indiana misses Michael Penix, but Wake Forest misses Sam Hartman. And they're not as good. I mean, they lost to Georgia Tech. They should have lost to Old Dominion. Somehow they won that one. But I guess like you said, with Pitt having new life with the new QB, I'll go with the Panthers to win 27-24.
Yeah, I'll go 28-24 then. Yeah. That's about right. Oh boy.
Man. This is the definition of a 50-50 game. Because you got Oklahoma State that has just beaten the 2 Kansas schools at home, looking better. And then you've got West Virginia. They have to go on the road and play country roads. And that's hard because it's a tough environment. And I think the fans still believe, that they can make a bowl game and that they're not bad. I mean, they've been better, but this is one of those games that's just so close because neither team has been consistently good. And I know that, like, what we last saw was West Virginia blow a game against Houston, and we saw Oklahoma State win their last 2. But I think overall for the full season, West Virginia has been a bit better over the full season. It hasn't been by much because, again, Oklahoma State's last 2 wins look really good. I mean, they're growing on me. They look all right. But it is on the road, and West Virginia is a pretty good home team. I'll go with the Mountaineers to win 28-24. I cannot believe I'm picking Neil Brown. I feel like I've lost my mind, but I'm gonna go with West Virginia to win 28-24.
I can't. I'll go Oklahoma State because they look better with their new quarterback. Sorry, Joey. I hope we win. I'll just go 28-24.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I want to go Oklahoma State. I really do, but West Virginia's at home, and it is hard to beat them there. So I just give them the benefit of the doubt. But neither team has my full, complete trust.
Yeah. Texas should blow out Houston.
Should. Key word is should. Houston got a solid win last week. It isn't home, but Texas has been playing great football. Even the Oklahoma loss wasn't terrible. They had a bye. I'll go with Texas to win 42-21.
Yeah, I'll go Texas 49-17. I don't trust Houston still. Their defense is bad.
Yeah, I think Texas will easily
Good
beat
game in the MAC. How about that? Both 6-1.
Before we get to that game, because that is a good game, Mike says West Virginia upsets Oklahoma State. That's not an upset because of the fact West Virginia is favored by 3.5 right now anyway. It's not an upset. It's a toss-up. Completely 50-50 game right now. I know what you mean, Mike, because Oklahoma State has won the last two and West Virginia just lost, but it's not an upset if West Virginia wins. But you are right. Morgantown is a great environment. Yeah, this is a good game. I mean, this is a game no one's going to watch because of the fact that it's, on ESPNU. You got all these other good games on at the same time, but not both teams 3-0 in the MAC. I mean, this is a game, if it's late in the fourth quarter and it's competitive, I might flip it on. This is actually a tough game to pick. I mean, Toledo's only loss is to Illinois, 30-28. Miami, they look really good as well. They beat Cincinnati.
They only lost to Miami, Florida.
Yeah, they only lost to Miami. That's right. And it was a blowout loss, but still, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're going off of who they lost to, you could lean Toledo because Miami did get blown out against Miami, and Miami has kind of not looked as good lately. But I mean, Toledo did lose to a 3-4 Big Ten team, so it could go either way. I guess I'll go Toledo by 3.
Yeah, I'll go Miami by 3 to be contrary.
Yeah, like we were going the exact same the whole time until like the last 3. We've got like the opposite, which is funny. I'll go UTSA.
Yeah, same. I trust Frank Harris.
They need Zachary Franklin back, though. They're just not as good.
Here we go.
North Carolina, big against Virginia. 45-14.
Yeah, I agree. I'll go 42-3.
Yeah, if North Carolina loses this game, it would probably just break the internet. Like, it would just be unbelievable if North Carolina lost. I don't see it. But anything can happen, but I don't see it.
Here we go. Hugh Freeze return. Well, no, they're playing at home. So Hugh Freeze playing his old team.
This is one of those games that has upset written all over it because it's at Jordan Hare at night. And the fact that Auburn almost beat Georgia, and if it wasn't for Brock Bowers in the fourth quarter, could have beat Georgia, then more people would believe in Auburn. Now, they did get destroyed last week against LSU, but it was on the road. Ole Miss is a good team. Jackson Dart's been playing well. I mean, no one's talking about him. Like, when you talk about, like, some of the better quarterbacks in the country, no one brings up Jackson Dart. But look at his stats. They're not bad. 12 touchdowns, 2 picks, 1,600 yards. Can't ask for much more than that. Judkins on the ground. He hasn't had a great season, but I think he's been banged up some, which hasn't really helped. And it's tough to run in the SEC. It really is. You have to be, like, at the top of your game to do it. I feel like he has more of a spotlight than he did last year because he was younger now that people know about him. It's like they're keying in on him more. But I think that Auburn could win this game because of the fact that you do have him facing his former team. It's at home. Like I said, it spells upset written all over. Auburn is not a great team, but they're good enough and they're talented enough to win a game like this, especially against an Ole Miss team that is not as talented as some of the other top teams in the SEC. They're not as talented as Alabama. They're not as talented as LSU or Georgia. But I'm going to go, with all that being said, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I think Lane Kiffin is going to find a way, even though sometimes Ole Miss gets themselves in trouble by going for it on fourth down a lot in key moments of game, especially a game like this. I could see Ole Miss losing this game, but I will take Ole Miss to beat Auburn 31-28. But I think this could be one of the best games of the day.
Yeah, right now I just don't. I trust Ole Miss's offense a lot better than I trust Auburn's.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Ole Miss's defense isn't great, but I'll still pick them to win. 45-28.
It could happen. I mean, it definitely could be a higher scoring game than what I had. I just think it's going to be a really close, hard-fought game that I think Auburn could win. It would not surprise me. It's one of those games where if Auburn wins and then people are like shocked on like Auburn won, I'm like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
It's just not a shock to me if Auburn won. But I'll go with Ole Miss. Maybe we've seen so many upsets that the upsets are not becoming as shocking anymore. It's crazy. Like, you know, when I was younger, if Auburn, like an unranked 3-3 Auburn team beat a top 15 team in Ole Miss, I'd be like, wow, that's unbelievable. Now it's like I've seen it all, man. I mean, we're seeing upsets galore that this would not shock me, but I'll still take Ole Miss.
BYU, Texas Tech. BYU had a stinker against TCU. Happy for Melissa and Clint.
What happened, though? Like, TCU the Big 12 is an enigma in general. Like, you look at TCU, I picked them to win a couple games earlier this season. They blew it. They didn't win. They've looked bad. So I'm like, you know what? I'm taking BYU. Give me Keaton Slovis against the Horned Frogs. And what do? They don't lose by 3. They lose by 30. 30 points. It doesn't matter that it was on the road. It doesn't make any difference. What happened to BYU? I don't know who to pick because of the fact that Texas Tech has had moments of being a decent football team, but they've also had moments where they've been horrible. And then BYU, like I said, I think that they're better than Texas Tech. Really, I do, but they've been bad in a couple of games. I don't know. I think I'll take BYU by 3. I could regret that, but I'll take BYU to win 27-24.
This one's tough, man, because Texas Tech, I know they got blown out by Kansas State, but that was because Kansas State finally let their 5-star quarterback, Avery Johnson, play. Well, I think he was 5 stars. I can look it up. So they did lose to a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But I still can't pick them to. I know BYU got blown out, but playing in Provo's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's true.
I think I'm going to pick BYU to win 28-24.
And that's another big reason why I did pick BYU that I didn't mention, because you're absolutely right. The home crowd for BYU is insane. They've always had a great home environment, and it's probably one of the biggest reasons they're in the Big 12 right now. I mean, that home crowd sells itself. You talk about a lot of teams that, you know, were not in power conferences before, you know, the last few years. BYU is a great home environment, and it's tough for teams to play there. Tech could win, and they are favored, but I think that line might shrink before game day from 4.5. I just think BYU is going to squeak it out. I don't trust either team, but I'll go BYU like you.
TCU, Kansas State, I think with Avery Johnson, he was a high 4-star, by the way, close to a 5-star. Mm-hmm. But with their new quarterback, Avery Johnson, I just trust them more than I trust Chandler Morris and TCU. So I'm going to go Kansas State to win 35-24 over TCU.
I didn't even see that. They made a QB change. I didn't even pay attention to that. Will Howard have been struggling, so it makes sense, especially, you know, like you said, he's a high 4-star, so, you know, give him a crack at it. Mm-hmm. K-State looked better. So, yeah, I'll go with Kansas State to win by 10. I think that they'll win 31-21. TCU, I mean, it's a great win over BYU, but is it a fluke or, you know, are they getting better? I don't know. I have no idea. And it's on the road. It's a tough road environment. I'll go with K-State. Chandler Morris has been inconsistent.
Yeah, Bucket Mike, I think the Big 12 is more like what the Big East was back in the day with more teams.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, right now, outside of Texas and Oklahoma, presumably those two teams by far the front runners. Everyone else is just you throw them in a blender and you get a weird result. You just don't know what you're going to see on any given weekend. And like picking them, it's almost like you're playing devil's advocate with yourself. Because every single week it's like, well, this team won this game and this team lost this game, so therefore I'm going to go with this team. But then that team loses to that team, so then you have to reevaluate that team. It's basically they just win some weeks, they lose other weeks, and you basically pick them wrong 80% of the time. That's what I'm doing in the Big 12 right now. I'm not getting them right.
Michigan should destroy Michigan State, even though it's in East Lansing. I'll go 42. I'll go 42-3 Michigan.
I mean, I'm waiting for Michigan to struggle in a game. And when Indiana was up 7-0, I had that like glimmer of hope. It's like, oh, Indiana, maybe they'll do it. No, Michigan blew them out. Michigan blew out Minnesota on the road. Michigan's blowing everyone out. They should win this game. I mean, I don't even see their like. I've always say it that there's a shot. You know, it's football. Anything can happen. It's a rivalry game, but Michigan, the way that they're playing versus what's going on at Michigan State, it would take a insanely bad performance from the Wolverines based on what we've seen from them, how they've beaten everyone by 30 plus. They've destroyed everyone. I'll go with Michigan to win 45-10.
Mm-hmm. And for Florida State and Duke, I think this game could be close if Riley Leonard's back.
That's the key as well. I don't know if he's going to be back.
I looked it up, and Mike Elko said he's day-to-day, which really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, day-to-day can mean he's out for 3 weeks. He could be day-to-day for 3 weeks, or he could be playing this weekend. So that don't help. I guess for the sake of this argument, I'll go with that he's not playing based off because that was a bad injury, and I think it's going to take him a little bit to recover. Florida State, I don't trust them. Like of all the teams at the top, they're the team I trust the least because they had the BC game. And at moments of games, they don't look great. But then other times they blow it open. They're just not consistently great, which is what you want to see from a top 5 team. You want to see a team be consistently great. But I will go with Florida State to win 35-24. I think they should win. I could see a world where they don't. But especially if Riley Leonard is not available, I think Duke's just not going to have enough offense, and Florida State should.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Riley Leonard being healthy. I think Florida State squeaks it out. I'll go 34-31 Knowles. But I hope it would be great for Notre Dame if Duke won because it would make Notre Dame look better.
Yeah, it'll propel Notre Dame back in the college football playoff conversation. Nah, definitely not. But it'll help boost their standing with people in college football and help them make a New Year's Six bowl for sure.
LSU Army, I think it'll be close. I'm going to go 24-21 LSU. Army always plays these top 10 teams close.
Yeah, I know. Jax is like, don't be surprised if Army LSU is that close game that no one's watching until the fourth quarter. I mean, Jaden Daniels, though. Like, I know the way that the armed forces play, that they're designed to keep the ball away from you, which can make your offense play sluggish because you don't have the ball. Like, I get that. But, I mean, Jaden Daniels' stats, though.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about a quarterback that no one's talking about for the Heisman that has a case for it, the way that he's putting up stats. It's Jaden Daniels. 2,294 yards, 22 touchdowns, 3 picks. And he runs too. So I think that Jaden Daniels has been playing way better than last year, even though LSU has a couple losses. It's just that LSU's defense isn't as good. That's why that LSU has 2 losses. If their defense was better, they wouldn't have lost the 2 games that they have. They either have 1 loss to Florida State or they'd be undefeated right now because Jaden Daniels is playing well. I think that LSU is going to win by more. Could be wrong because the fact Army, the way they play is designed to do that. But I think LSU will win 31-14.
Here it is. I think this is the second best game of the day. And it's going to be Utah USC. Will Cam Rising be back?
I mean, this is one of those games, though, just like with Duke, Florida State, where you don't know based off the quarterback. Because if, like, for example, if I pick USC, for example, and Cam Rising does play and Utah wins, or like if it's announced like 2 days later that he'll play or whatever, then it's like, of course, my mind's going to shift, but I've made my pick and I do like to stand by my pick. But it's just frustrating because you don't know. I thought that Rising would be back earlier than this. I actually thought he would have been back in the Cal game or even, the Oregon State game or something. I thought he would have been back by now. I get why he's not. It was a bad injury, and you don't need to rush him back. And if it does take him redshirting and coming back next year, and if that's the best course of action, then so be it. That's what Utah should do. But whether he plays or not, USC's defense is so bad that Utah is going to put up points, but I think having Cam Rising makes Utah's offense good enough to possibly win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. USC, it's going to come down to Caleb Williams. Will he bounce back and play like he normally does? Will he throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns or what? If he does that, I think USC is going to win. But we don't know if he's going to have another bad game or not. I'll let you pick first.
I think that SC gets it together and wins 35-28.
If Cam Rising was back, I'd pick Utah. I actually legitimately would because USC's defense is so horrible that I think Utah could put up 45 points, and that might be enough with their defense to actually beat the Trojans. But since we don't know and it doesn't look like he will, I think USC is going to bounce back. I mean, they more than likely are out of CFP contention. I mean, if they won out in dominating fashion, you could see a crazy world where they get back in the conversation. But, I mean, they fell hard after that loss. 8 spots to number 18, and they deserve to fall that far. I mean, they didn't lose by 3. They lost by 28. They're completely abysmal against Notre Dame. But if Caleb Williams bounces back, which I think he will, and if Utah's offense just is not good enough without Rising that USC's defense can, I guess, get some stops, I'll go with the Trojans to win 42-31.
This is a sneaky good game. Clemson and Miami.
Miami is better than what they've shown the last 2 weeks, especially in the Georgia Tech game. They're better than that. They have more talent than that. But they haven't won. And Miami, when they play like a team that, can go out there and be probably one of the top 5 teams in the ACC, I would pick them to win this one. Because Clemson is nowhere near as good as they used to be. They're not. They don't have as much talent. They don't have as much depth with the portal and everything and other teams having the advantage. So Clemson is way more beatable than they used to be. They're not ranked. They're 4-2. But I just don't trust Miami anymore. The way that they played the last 2 weeks, they're better than that, and I could see them winning, but I'll go with Clemson to beat Miami 27-21.
This is when Clemson shows that, hey, we may not be a contender for the playoff, but we can still contend for the ACC. I don't know. I feel like Miami, I feel like they're just gonna fall apart, honestly. So I'm gonna go Clemson to win this game, 38-17. I think that they take it.
Yeah, Miami could very well collapse. Like you said, this could be the game where they just fall apart completely. And I just think Clemson's not going to throw in the towel either. I'm with you. They're still a talented team, despite not being as talented as they were versus the rest of the college football, great teams. They're still better than, for the most part, except that Wake game. Throw out that Wake game where they won 17-12. That was ugly, but they still won. I think Clemson will win. Miami's just too inconsistent. But Miami could win if they play better.
Yeah. All right, we have the last 2. Pac-12 after darks.
Yeah, Washington there's always a letdown. People talk about that, but Arizona State is not going to have enough on either side of the ball to, I think, stretch Washington. Penix is playing too well. 20 touchdowns, 3 picks, 2,301 yards. Probably the favorite to win the Heisman as of right now. I think that's going to continue, and Washington's easily going to beat Arizona State 42-17.
Yeah, I'll go 49-0. I don't think Arizona State's a good team right now.
The other game, you got UCLA Stanford. Stanford beat Colorado. Great win for Stanford. They needed it. I mean, if they beat Sacramento State, they'd be 3-3 right now, which would look better. But UCLA, I know they came off a loss, and Dante Moore, especially on the road, is nowhere near as good as he is at home. 10 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's very inconsistent. He's just young. Stanford, you could see a possibility they build off of the Colorado win and get another win, but Stanford doesn't have a lot of fans, and it's not going to be that difficult for Dante Moore. It'll almost be kind of like a practice environment. It won't be that bad. So I think UCLA will beat Stanford 31-20. I think Stanford will score some. I think they'll have some momentum from last week, but UCLA will win.
Yeah, I'm going to go UCLA 38 to Stanford 17. Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's our show for today. Hope everyone had a good time watching us. Everyone, of course, going to be looking forward to that Penn State-Ohio State game. And who knows, man? Like, who knows if Riley Leonard's healthy, if Cam Rising's healthy. If one of those guys are healthy, I'm sure that'll be a great game too.
Yeah, there's some good games. I mean, it's not, probably going to be as crazy of a week you would think as last week with the amount of results that did not go as people expected, but still a lot of good games. And obviously that Penn State-Ohio State game is a headliner, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And there's some other good games. Can Indiana save their bowl hopes? I mean, there's a lot of storylines still. It's going to be another awesome week of college football, I'm sure. And hopefully Riley Leonard and Cam Rising can play in those games and, to make those games possibly even better. So it's going to be interesting.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone, and check us out next week on Jeffrey's channel.
Thanks for being here, everybody.